Hi everyone. Great to have you here at H. Potter. Get comfortable because today we're presenting Harry Potter and the blood curse that made him absorb the power of every wizard who tried to kill him. Before we start, a gentle reminder, if you love stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm show our videos to more people. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. Chapter 1, The Awakening. Harry woke with a jolt, his scar burning like someone had pressed a hot iron to his forehead. The recurring nightmare of Cedric's death faded as he fumbled for his glasses on the nightstand. 3 weeks since the graveyard, and he still couldn't sleep through the night without seeing that green flash, hearing those words, "Kill the spare." Bloody hell, he muttered, checking his watch. 2:17 a.m. The smallest bedroom at number 4, Privet Drive felt like a prison cell. Harry had written to Ron and Hermione almost daily, but their responses were frustratingly vague. Something about security concerns, and how they couldn't say much. Even Sirius had been oddly distant. A soft tapping at his window interrupted his brooding. An unfamiliar tawny owl peered at him through the glass. Harry hesitated. Who would be writing at this hour? Dumbledore had warned him to be cautious about unexpected correspondence. The owl tapped again, more insistently. All right, Harry whispered, sliding off his bed and cracking the window. The bird hopped inside, extending its leg. The small scroll attached bore no seal or identifying marks. Harry untied it and unrolled a single slip of parchment. In an elegant, unfamiliar script were just 5 words, "They're coming. Get out now." The back of Harry's neck prickled. He grabbed his wand from under his pillow and peered through the curtains. The street lamps cast long shadows across Privet Drive, but nothing seemed amiss. No hooded figures, no strange lights, just the same pristine suburban street. Then he saw it. A ripple of movement near Mrs. Figg's house, like heat shimmering off pavement. A disillusionment charm. Shit, Harry breathed. He had seconds, maybe minutes. He grabbed his rucksack, stuffing it with essentials, invisibility cloak, photo album, the few letters from Sirius he'd received. His wand stayed clutched in his right hand. He'd been expelled once for underage magic, facing expulsion again seemed trivial if the alternative was death. The floorboard outside his door creaked. Harry froze. The Dursleys never checked on him, especially not at this hour. Another creak, deliberately slow. Someone was trying to be stealthy. He aimed his wand at the door and backed toward the window. The handle turned slowly, and Harry's heart hammered against his ribs. The door swung open, and a burst of red light shot toward him. Harry ducked, and the stunning spell blasted a hole in the wall behind him. "Potter's awake," a harsh voice shouted. A masked figure stepped into the room, wand raised. Harry didn't hesitate. Expelliarmus. The Death Eater blocked it with a lazy flick. The Dark Lord said to bring you alive, but he didn't specify undamaged. Harry dove behind the bed as another spell shattered his desk. Hedwig's empty cage crashed to the floor, thank God he'd let her out to hunt earlier. Stupefy. Harry shouted, aiming under the bed at the Death Eater's legs. The man jumped aside, laughing. "Come quietly, Potter, and we'll leave your muggle relatives alive." Impedimenta. Harry countered, but the Death Eater batted it away. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Uncle Vernon's angry bellow, "What's going on up there?" was cut short by a sickening thud. "Your protection is gone, boy," the Death Eater taunted. "The Blood Wards failed the moment the Dark Lord took your blood. No one's coming to save you." A second Death Eater appeared in the doorway. "Mulciber, stop playing with him. Grab the boy and let's go." Harry's mind raced. 2 Death Eaters, possibly more downstairs. No Order members in sight. No way to contact help. "Fuck it," Harry muttered. He pointed his wand at the window. Reducto. The window exploded outward in a shower of glass and splintered wood. Harry dived through the opening before the Death Eaters could react, tucking his body as he hit the roof of the extension below. Pain shot through his shoulder, but adrenaline pushed it aside. He rolled down the sloping tiles and dropped to the garden, landing hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. He's outside. One of the Death Eaters leaned out the shattered window, firing curses that exploded in the flower beds around Harry. Harry scrambled to his feet and sprinted toward Magnolia Crescent. If he could reach the park, he might lose them in the darkness. A black-robed figure stepped out from behind the garage, cutting off his escape. "Going somewhere, Potter?" Harry skidded to a halt. The Death Eater was tall, his silver mask glinting in the moonlight. Behind him, Harry heard the other two exiting the house. Surrounded. The tall Death Eater raised his wand. "The Dark Lord will reward us handsomely for delivering you." Harry gripped his wand tighter, mind spinning through every spell he knew. None seemed adequate against 3 trained killers. Stupefy. A jet of red light shot over Harry's shoulder, striking the tall Death Eater square in the chest. He crumpled without a sound. Harry spun around. A figure stood at the corner of the house, purple hair, leather jacket, wand extended. "Watcher, Harry." "Duck." Harry dropped as the woman fired another spell past him. One of the pursuing Death Eaters deflected it and snarled, "Horror." "Damn right," the woman replied, advancing with remarkable speed. "And you lot are trespassing." The remaining Death Eaters spread out, flanking Harry and his unexpected savior. "Harry, get behind me," the woman ordered, not taking her eyes off the threat. "Who are you?" Harry asked, backing toward her while keeping his wand trained on the nearest Death Eater. "Tonks. Order member. Explanations later, if we survive this little party." One Death Eater lunged forward. "Crucio." Tonks pulled Harry aside as the unforgivable curse sizzled past them. "Incarcerus," she countered, but the Death Eater sidestepped. The night exploded into chaos. Curses flew in all directions, illuminating the pristine suburban gardens with flashes of deadly light. Harry and Tonks fought back to back, deflecting and countering as best they could. "We need to get to the extraction point." Tonks shouted over her shoulder. "Can you make it to the park?" "Cover me," Harry replied. They began edging toward the street, maintaining a shield charm between spells. The 2 Death Eaters pressed their advantage, herding them toward the house where their stunned companion lay. "Damn it, they're boxing us in," Tonks muttered. "On 3, we sprint for it." 1, 2, a jet of sickly yellow light broke through their defenses, catching Tonks in the leg. She stumbled with a cry of pain, her shield collapsing. "Tonks!" Harry moved to help her, but she shoved him away. "Run! Get to the park. Others are waiting, Avada Kedavra." Green light flashed toward Harry. Pure instinct took over, he dived aside, rolled, and came up firing. Stupefy. His spell caught the Death Eater mid-incantation, dropping him instantly. The remaining Death Eater snarled with rage. "You'll pay for that, Potter." He aimed not at Harry but at the fallen Tonks. "Avada, no." Harry screamed, throwing himself between them. Expelliarmus. Their spells collided in midair. But instead of the priori incantatem effect Harry had experienced with Voldemort, something entirely different happened. The Death Eater's wand didn't just fly from his hand, it shattered, splintering into 1,000 fragments. A wave of energy surged back through Harry's wand and into his body. It felt like being struck by lightning and doused in ice water simultaneously. He gasped, dropping to his knees as power coursed through him, foreign and familiar all at once. The Death Eater staggered backward, clutching his bleeding hand. What did you do?" Harry couldn't answer. His veins felt like they were filled with liquid fire. Images flashed before his eyes, memories that weren't his own, spells he'd never learned, faces he didn't recognize. You're not Potter," the Death Eater stammered, backing away. "What are you?" Harry struggled to his feet, his wand hand trembling. Something had changed. He could feel it, magic swirling inside him, different from his own, darker and more volatile. The Death Eater turned to flee. Without conscious thought, Harry flicked his wand. Impedimenta. The spell hit with such force that the Death Eater was lifted off his feet and slammed into the garden wall. He slid to the ground, unconscious or worse. Harry stared at his wand in shock. He'd barely whispered the incantation, yet the power behind it had been massive. "Bloody hell, Harry," Tonks groaned from the ground, clutching her injured leg. "What was that?" Harry shook his head, still dazed. "I don't know. He broke off as a sharp pain lanced through his scar. "We need to go. More might be coming." He helped Tonks to her feet, supporting her weight as they limped toward the park. Every step felt strange, as if his body had become lighter yet somehow more substantial. "The others should be at the meeting point," Tonks said through gritted teeth. "If they heard the commotion, Potter." A harsh voice called from behind them. Harry turned to see the first Death Eater, the one Tonks had stunned, back on his feet and advancing. His silver mask had fallen away, revealing a gaunt face contorted with fury. "You've caused enough trouble," the man snarled, raising his wand. "The Dark Lord can find another way." Avada Kedavra. Time seemed to slow. Harry couldn't dodge while supporting Tonks. Instead, acting purely on the new instinct surging within him, he thrust his own wand forward and shouted, "Protego." The shield charm had never been intended to block unforgivable curses. It shouldn't have worked. It didn't, not exactly. The killing curse struck Harry's shield and shattered it, but instead of passing through, the green light seemed to warp, coiling around Harry like a serpent. For a heartbeat, Harry felt death's cold touch, then heat, blinding and overwhelming, as the curse was absorbed into his body. Harry screamed. The sensation was 1,000 times more intense than before, magic ripping into him, through him, becoming part of him. He felt the Death Eater's essence pouring into his own, decades of dark knowledge, twisted hatreds, secret fears, and raw power. When his vision cleared, Harry was on his knees again. Tonks stood protectively over him, wand aimed at where the Death Eater had been. There was nothing left but a pile of empty robes and a wand, snapped cleanly in two. "Harry," Tonks whispered, her voice shaking, "what the hell just happened?" Harry couldn't answer. The foreign magic inside him swirled and settled, melding with his core in a way that felt irrevocable. He knew spells now that he'd never studied, could recall casting dark curses with these same hands, only they hadn't been his hands in those memories. "I think," he managed, throat dry, "I think I killed him." "No," Tonks said, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "That's not what killing looks like. That was something else. Something I've never seen before." Harry struggled to his feet. His body felt wrong, stronger but unstable, like he'd been rebuilt with pieces that didn't quite fit. "We need to get to Dumbledore," he said, finding his voice strangely altered, deeper and more resonant. Tonks nodded numbly, still staring at the empty robes. "The extraction team is waiting. Can you walk?" "Better than you," Harry replied, helping support her again. "Who sent you, anyway? How did the Order know?" "They didn't," Tonks admitted as they moved toward the park. "I was just doing my rotation on guard duty when I saw the wards flicker and die. Sent a Patronus to headquarters but couldn't wait for backup." The park was empty when they arrived, but only for moments. With multiple cracks of apparition, figures materialized from the darkness: Mad-Eye Moody, his magical eye spinning wildly, Remus Lupin, looking even more haggard than Harry remembered, and Kingsley Shacklebolt, tall and imposing in royal blue robes. "Potter," Moody growled, limping forward. "What happened? Where are the attackers?" Before Harry could answer, Moody's magical eye fixed on him, and the grizzled aura went rigid. "What in Merlin's name?" He raised his wand, pointing it directly at Harry's chest. Mad-Eye, what are you doing? Tonks demanded. That's not Potter, Moody snarled. Or not just Potter. His magical signature is contaminated. Harry felt a surge of the foreign magic responding to the threat, rising like bile in his throat. He fought to contain it. It's me, Professor. Something happened when I fought the Death Eaters. Something changed. Lupin stepped forward cautiously. Harry? Are you hurt? Not physically, Harry said, still supporting Tonks. But something's wrong with my magic. When I defended myself, I somehow absorbed something from the Death Eater who attacked me. Absorbed? Kingsley's deep voice carried across the park. Explain. Harry struggled to find the words. I can feel his magic inside me. His knowledge. Even fragments of memories. Like I've eaten part of him. A heavy silence fell over the group. We need to get them both out of here, Lupin finally said. The Ministry will have detected underage magic. Aurors could arrive any minute. And what exactly do we do with him? Moody demanded, wand still trained on Harry. If he's been compromised, he saved my life, Mad-Eye, Tonks interrupted fiercely. Twice. Whatever's happened to him, he's still Harry. Moody's normal eye narrowed, but he lowered his wand slightly. Fine. But he's to be secured when we reach headquarters. No wand, constant supervision. I'm right here, Harry snapped, the foreign magic surging again with his anger. The nearby street lamp flickered and went out. Everyone tensed. Sorry, Harry added quickly, fighting to calm himself. I can't seem to control it properly. All the more reason for caution, Moody said grimly. Shacklebolt, take Tonks. Lupin, you're with Potter. I'll cover our retreat. As they prepared to leave, Harry glanced back at Privet Drive one last time. Emergency lights flashed in the distance, Muggle police responding to the disturbance. The Dursleys would be questioned, memories modified, the incident explained away. But there would be no explaining away what had happened to Harry. He could feel it settling deeper into his core with each passing minute, the foreign magic becoming less foreign, the Death Eater's knowledge integrating with his own. He knew the man's name now, Travers. A skilled curse-breaker before joining Voldemort. An expert in breaking protective enchantments, which explained how they dismantled the blood wards around Privet Drive. Harry shivered. This knowledge wasn't his, yet now it was. Harry? Lupin's concerned voice broke through his thoughts. We need to go. Hold tight, side-along apparition isn't pleasant. Harry nodded and gripped Lupin's arm. As the squeezing darkness of apparition enveloped him, one terrible thought surfaced. What if this was just the beginning? Grimmauld Place was exactly as unwelcoming as Harry's fragmentary memories suggested. Travers had been here once, years ago, visiting the Blacks as a pure-blood socialite before. Harry shook his head violently, trying to dislodge the alien memory. Stop it, he muttered to himself. Did you say something, Harry? Lupin asked as they approached the hidden townhouse. Just, fighting with the new memories, Harry admitted quietly. They keep bubbling up. Lupin's face creased with concern, but he said nothing more as they climbed the worn stone steps. The door swung open before they reached it, revealing Sirius Black's haggard face. Harry. His godfather pulled him into a fierce hug, then held him at arm's length. Are you all right? Moody's Patronus said there was an attack, but you were, he broke off, frowning. Something's different about you. Harry attempted a smile that felt stiff on his face. Long story. Is Dumbledore here? Not yet. He's been notified. Sirius ushered them inside, looking Harry over with increasing confusion. You look older somehow. The narrow hallway was dark and depressing, lined with mounted house elf heads that made Harry's stomach turn. No, that was Travers' reaction. Harry himself had never been here before. The internal disconnect made him stumble. Careful there, Sirius steadied him. Let's get you to the kitchen. Everyone's waiting. Everyone? Harry asked, suddenly apprehensive. The foreign magic inside him roiled at the prospect of facing a crowd. The order, Sirius explained, leading him down a creaking staircase. Well, those currently at headquarters. They've been in emergency session since Tonks Patronus arrived. The kitchen was warm and brightly lit compared to the rest of the house, but the atmosphere inside was tense. Around a long wooden table sat several familiar faces, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, Bill Weasley, Professor McGonagall, and some Harry didn't recognize. All conversation stopped when he entered. Harry, dear. Mrs. Weasley rushed forward, enveloping him in a motherly hug. She stiffened almost immediately, pulling back with a puzzled expression. You're different, Harry finished for her. I know. Sit down, Potter, Moody ordered from the head of the table. We need your full account before Dumbledore arrives. Harry took a seat, acutely aware of everyone's stares. Tonks had been taken upstairs for medical attention, and Lupin had followed, leaving him feeling oddly exposed despite Sirius's protective presence beside him. Start from the beginning, Moody directed. The warning note. Harry recounted everything, the mysterious owl, the Death Eater's attack, Tonks' timely arrival, and then, hesitantly, the strange absorption that had happened twice. The first time, when our spells collided, it was like I pulled something from him through our connected magic, Harry explained, struggling to find the right words. But the second time, when Travers cast the killing curse at me. Travers? McGonagall interrupted sharply. How do you know it was Travers? Harry froze, realizing his mistake. I know it now. From his memories. He was a curse-breaker for Gringotts before joining Voldemort. Several people around the table flinched at the name. He specialized in dismantling protective enchantments. That's why they sent him, to break through the blood wards. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. You have his memories? Mr. Weasley asked, looking pale. All of them? Fragments, Harry said. They keep surfacing randomly. And his magical knowledge too. I know spells I've never learned. Dark magic, Moody stated flatly. Harry met his gaze steadily. Yes. Some of it. And his body? Bill Weasley spoke up. You said there was nothing left but empty robes. And a broken wand, Harry confirmed. It was like he was consumed. I felt his essence pour into me when the killing curse rebounded, or whatever it did. McGonagall exchanged a troubled look with Moody. This sounds like ancient magic. Very ancient, and very dark. I didn't do it on purpose. Harry protested, a surge of foreign anger rising in him. The glasses on the table rattled. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Sorry. The new magic is responsive to emotions. Sirius placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. No one's accusing you, Harry. We're just trying to understand what happened. The kitchen door opened, and all heads turned as Albus Dumbledore swept in, resplendent in midnight blue robes. His face was grave as he surveyed the room, his gaze finally settling on Harry. For the first time in Harry's memory, Dumbledore looked genuinely shocked. Harry, the headmaster said softly, approaching the table. What has happened to you? Before Harry could respond, the foreign magic inside him reacted violently to Dumbledore's presence. Images flashed through his mind, Travers' memories of Dumbledore defeating a dark wizard in single combat decades ago, the terrifying power the old man had displayed. Harry doubled over, gripping the table as he fought to contain the conflicting energies. Stay back, he gasped. Travers was afraid of you. His magic is defensive. Dumbledore halted, studying Harry with intense concern. Fascinating. The magical signature has indeed been altered, yet remains fundamentally yours, Harry. Can you fix it? Harry asked, straightening up as the magical reaction subsided. Remove what I took from him. Dumbledore conjured a chair and sat down, never taking his eyes off Harry. I'm not certain this is something that can be fixed, as you put it. What you're describing is exceedingly rare magic, a form of power transference that should be impossible under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, Sirius pointed out. Harry survived the killing curse twice now. Indeed. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. Which brings us to a troubling possibility. Harry, I must ask you something of great importance. When Voldemort used your blood in the resurrection ritual, did he say anything specific about taking your protection into himself? Harry thought back to the graveyard. He said my mother's protection would be in his veins too. That he could touch me without harm. He unconsciously rubbed the scar on his arm where Wormtail had cut him. Dumbledore's expression grew even graver. As I feared. It appears that in using your blood, Voldemort altered the ancient protection left by your mother in ways I had not anticipated. Instead of simply neutralizing it, he may have transformed it. Into what? McGonagall asked sharply. A blood curse, Dumbledore replied softly. Or more precisely, a blood curse's mirror, a protective enchantment that activates when someone attempts to kill the bearer, drawing their power into the protected person instead. That's not possible, Bill said, looking stunned. Blood curses don't work that way. They're malevolent by nature. Unless, Dumbledore mused, the original protection was so powerful, so pure in its intent, that even when corrupted by Voldemort's ritual, it maintained its protective purpose while adopting a more aggressive mechanism. Harry tried to process this. So what you're saying is, when someone tries to kill me, you absorb their power instead, Dumbledore finished. A rather ironic twist on Voldemort's intent, I must say. But what does this mean for Harry? Mrs. Weasley demanded, her protective instincts flaring. Is he in danger from this, absorption? Dumbledore regarded Harry thoughtfully. That remains to be seen. The immediate physical danger appears minimal, but the psychological effects of absorbing another wizard's magic, memories, and possibly aspects of their personality, that is uncharted territory. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Will I become like them? The people I absorb? I don't believe so, Dumbledore said gently. Your core self remains intact, Harry. But you will need to learn to integrate these new elements without allowing them to overwhelm your own identity. And how exactly is he supposed to do that? Sirius demanded. This isn't covered in the Hogwarts curriculum, last I checked. No, Dumbledore agreed. It will require specialized training. Occlumency, certainly, to organize and compartmentalize the foreign memories. And careful magical practice to control the new abilities without succumbing to their darker aspects. Harry felt overwhelmed. Just weeks ago, his biggest concern had been convincing people that Voldemort had returned. Now he was dealing with an ancient blood curse that turned him into some kind of magical vampire. There's something else, he said suddenly, remembering. Travers said the blood wards at Privet Drive had failed. That they collapsed the moment Voldemort took my blood. Dumbledore nodded gravely. Another consequence I had not fully anticipated. The protection was based on your blood connection to your aunt, blood that Voldemort now shares. You cannot return there, Harry. It is no longer safe. He'll stay here, Sirius said firmly. With me. For now, yes, Dumbledore agreed. But we must be cautious. As news of what happened tonight spreads among Voldemort's followers, Harry will become a target in a different way. Not to be killed, but to be captured and studied. Voldemort will want to understand this new development, and exploit it if possible. Or reverse it, Moody growled. If Potter can take power from those who attack him, Voldemort will want to ensure he doesn't become too powerful to handle. The implications hung heavy in the air. Harry felt the weight of everyone's stares, concern, fear, curiosity, all directed at him. I think, Dumbledore said gently, that Harry has had quite enough for one night. Perhaps we should continue this discussion after he has rested. Harry opened his mouth to protest but found himself suddenly overwhelmed with exhaustion. The adrenaline of the attack was wearing off, leaving him drained. "Come on, mate," Sirius said, helping him up. "I'll show you to your room. You'll be sharing with Ron. He and Hermione arrived last week." "Ron and Hermione are here?" Harry perked up slightly. "Why didn't they tell me?" Sirius looked uncomfortable. "Dumbledore's orders. No sensitive information in letters, in case they were intercepted." Harry felt a flare of resentment, but it was quickly smothered by fatigue. He'd deal with that tomorrow. Right now, he needed sleep, needed to process everything that had happened. As Sirius led him from the kitchen, he heard Dumbledore's voice behind him, "We must move quickly. If my suspicions are correct, this is only the beginning." Harry woke disoriented, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar ceiling above him. The events of the previous night crashed back into his consciousness, the attack, the strange absorption, Grimmauld Place. He sat up, finding himself in a gloomy bedroom with peeling wallpaper and twin beds. Ron's familiar snoring came from the other bed, his lanky form sprawled beneath tangled sheets. Harry reached for his glasses on the nightstand, then paused. His vision seemed clearer. Not perfect, but definitely improved. He put the glasses on anyway, finding the prescription now slightly too strong. Another change from the absorption. Travers hadn't worn glasses in the memory fragments Harry had glimpsed. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, noticing other subtle differences. His movements felt more fluid, his balance better. Even his magical sense seemed heightened. He could almost feel the protective enchantments layered throughout Grimmauld Place, the subtle buzz of magical objects hidden in various corners. "Harry?" Ron's sleepy voice interrupted his thoughts. "You're awake." "Bloody hell, mate, when did you get here?" "Nobody told me you were coming last night." Harry turned to find his friend sitting up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Ron's expression quickly shifted from delight to confusion as he got a proper look at Harry. "Something's different about you," Ron said, frowning. "Did you do something with your hair?" Harry gave a hollow laugh. "Not exactly. It's complicated." "When isn't it with you?" Ron replied with a grin that faded as Harry didn't return it. "That bad, huh?" "Yeah," Harry said quietly. "That bad." He gave Ron a condensed version of the previous night's events. Ron's eyes grew progressively wider, his freckles standing out against increasingly pale skin. "Bloody hell," he whispered when Harry finished. "So you've got this Death Eater's powers now? And memories? That's horrifying," Harry suggested. "I was going to say wicked, but yeah, also pretty disturbing," Ron admitted. "Does it hurt?" Harry considered the question. "Not physically. But having someone else's memories pop into your head without warning is disorienting. And the magic feels volatile, like it's not fully settled." Ron seemed to be processing this. "Can you show me? I mean, can you do something he could do that you couldn't before?" Harry hesitated. Should he be experimenting with Travers' abilities? But curiosity won out. He focused on one of the simpler spells he'd extracted from Travers' knowledge, a detection charm for hidden magical objects. "Revelio Arcanum," he murmured, making a spiral motion with his hand. He hadn't intended to cast wandlessly, it had just happened naturally, as if the spell knew its own proper form. A soft blue glow emanated from several spots around the room, a loose floorboard beneath Ron's bed, a seemingly ordinary book on the shelf, and the door handle. "Whoa," Ron breathed. "What is that?" "Detection spell," Harry explained, surprised at how easily it had worked. "Shows hidden enchantments. According to Travers' memories, the floorboard is hollow, probably used by the black children to hide contraband. The book has some kind of preservation charm. And the door handle." Harry frowned, focusing on the information flowing from the spell. The door handle alerts someone when it's turned. Probably Moody's doing. Ron looked impressed and uneasy in equal measure. That's Newt-level magic at least. And you did it wandlessly. Yeah, Harry said, looking at his hand in surprise. That part wasn't intentional. A knock at the door interrupted them. Boys? Are you awake? Mrs. Weasley's voice called. Breakfast is ready downstairs. Coming, Mom. Ron called back. He turned to Harry with a serious expression. Listen, just so you know, Hermione's been driving everyone mad with research about you-know-who's return. When she hears about this, she'll have me surrounded by books within minutes, Harry finished with a small smile. Some things never change. Ron grinned. It's good to have you here, mate. Even if you are turning into some kind of magical power sponge. Harry appreciated the attempt at normalcy, even as he felt anything but normal. They dressed quickly and headed downstairs, Harry bracing himself for Hermione's reaction and the inevitable scrutiny from the rest of the house's occupants. The kitchen was crowded when they entered. Mrs. Weasley bustled around the stove, while Fred, George, Ginny, and Hermione sat at the table alongside Sirius, Lupin, and Tonks, the latter with her leg bandaged but looking much better. Harry. Hermione jumped up and threw her arms around him, then immediately stepped back with a startled expression. You feel different. Told you, Ron muttered. Hermione studied Harry's face intently. Your features are subtly altered. And your magical aura, I've been practicing aura sensing with Professor Lupin, it's changed. More complex. Good morning to you too, Hermione, Harry said dryly. She blushed. Sorry. It's just fascinating from a magical theory perspective. I've never read about anything like this. None of us have, Lupin said, gesturing for Harry to sit. How are you feeling this morning, Harry? Harry took a seat, aware of everyone watching him. Better, I think. The foreign magic seems to be settling. Less volatile than last night. Foreign magic? Ginny asked, looking from Harry to her parents. What happened? Mrs. Weasley tooted nervously. Perhaps this isn't breakfast conversation, they might as well know, Sirius interrupted. It'll be all over the order by midday anyway. With reluctant permission from the adults, Harry once again explained what had happened, keeping it as straightforward as possible. Fred and George looked fascinated, Ginny concerned, and Hermione, well, Hermione looked like she'd just discovered an entirely new branch of magic to research. So essentially, she said when he'd finished, you've developed a magical defense mechanism that converts an attacker's killing intent into a transference of their own power to you? That's unprecedented. Leave it to Hermione to make it sound like a research paper, Ron muttered, helping himself to sausages. It's not as clinical as it sounds, Harry said quietly. I can feel Travers inside me, his hatred, his prejudices, even the pleasure he took in hurting people. It's like having a voice whispering dark thoughts. The table fell silent at this sobering statement. That's why Dumbledore wants to start you on a clemency, Lupin explained gently. It should help you compartmentalize these foreign elements. When does that start? Harry asked. This afternoon, Sirius replied. Dumbledore's sending Snape to, Snape? Harry interrupted incredulously. You're joking. He hates me. Professor Snape, Mrs. Weasley corrected automatically. Dumbledore trusts him, Lupin said firmly. And he's an accomplished occlumens. Few are better qualified to teach you. Harry felt the foreign magic stirring again, responding to his anger. Travers had known Snape as a Death Eater, had never fully believed his redemption story. The memories colored Harry's own distrust. Fine, he said tightly, forcing the magic back down. When is he coming? After lunch, Sirius answered, looking no happier about it than Harry felt. In the meantime, Dumbledore suggested you practice basic control exercises. Nothing complex, just getting used to the new magical balance. Hermione immediately perked up. I can help with that. I've been researching meditative techniques for magical control. They're used in advanced transfiguration to maintain focus during complex transformations. Despite his apprehension about Snape's impending arrival, Harry found himself grateful for Hermione's academic enthusiasm. It felt normal, grounding. After breakfast, Hermione dragged Harry and Ron to the Black family library, a gloomy room lined with ominous-looking tomes that Harry suspected would be right at home in the restricted section at Hogwarts. Sirius says most of these books are filled with dark magic, Hermione explained as she scanned the shelves, but there are some standard magical theory texts mixed in. Ah, here. She pulled out a heavy volume bound in faded blue leather. Magical Equilibrium and Control by Arsenius Jigger. Wasn't he the Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook author? Ron asked, surprisingly. Yes, but he was primarily a magical theorist, Hermione replied, already flipping through pages. This book deals with how to stabilize one's magic after traumatic events or exposure to powerful magical artifacts. Or absorbing another wizard's power, Harry added dryly. Exactly, Hermione said, missing his sarcasm. Now, the first exercise is straightforward, magical inventory. You need to identify what feels like you and what doesn't. Harry raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do I do that? Hermione set the book down open to a page with diagrams of magical cores represented by swirling colored patterns. Close your eyes and focus inward. Visualize your magic as a color or texture. Then try to identify the elements that feel foreign. Harry exchanged a skeptical look with Ron but closed his eyes. He tried to follow Hermione's instructions, focusing on his magical core as he understood it. To his surprise, he could actually sense something, a warm, familiar energy that he recognized as distinctly his. But there was something else too, a darker current intertwined with his own magic, moving in different patterns. I can see it, he said softly, eyes still closed. My magic is, gold, sort of bright. And Travers is darker, more purple, moving differently. That's excellent, Harry. Hermione said excitedly. Now, according to the book, you should try to maintain awareness of the boundary between them. Not to separate them, that's probably impossible, but to recognize when the foreign magic is influencing you. Harry concentrated, trying to trace the boundary where his gold magic met Travers' purple. It was difficult, the two were already blending at the edges, creating a swirling pattern of mixed energies. He was so deeply focused that he didn't notice the door opening until a cold voice broke his concentration. How touching. Potter has his own study group. Harry's eyes snapped open. Severus Snape stood in the doorway, his black robes making him look like a shadow against the dark wood paneling. Professor, Hermione greeted nervously. We were just practicing magical centering techniques, spare me the explanations, Miss Granger, Snape cut her off. I am here to teach Potter occlumency, not to discuss your extracurricular research. His dark eyes fixed on Harry, narrowing slightly. Though I must admit, the change in your magical signature is noteworthy. Harry felt Travers' magic react to Snape's presence, a mixture of deference and suspicion that colored his own response. You're early. Sirius said after lunch. I prefer to assess what I'm dealing with before wasting my afternoon, Snape replied coldly. Come with me, Potter. We'll use the drawing room. Harry stood reluctantly. Ron gave him a sympathetic grimace, while Hermione whispered, remember the boundary visualization. Snape led Harry to a dusty drawing room on the second floor, closing the door firmly behind them. With a flick of his wand, he moved the furniture to the edges of the room, creating a clear space in the center. Before we begin, Snape said, studying Harry with unnerving intensity, explain exactly what happened with Travers. Harry briefly recounted the events again, trying to stick to the facts without revealing how vulnerable he felt. When he mentioned absorbing Travers' memories and magical knowledge, Snape's expression grew even more focused. Show me, he demanded. Perform a spell Travers knew that you did not previously know. Harry hesitated, then decided on a relatively harmless example. He focused on a technique Travers had used for detecting hidden messages in documents, useful for a cursebreaker. Scriptum Revelio, he said, pointing his wand at a dusty book on a nearby table. The pages of the book began to glow faintly, previously invisible text appearing between the printed lines, notes made by some previous reader. Snape observed without comment, his face unreadable. And the memories? How complete are they? Fragmentary, Harry replied. They surface randomly, usually triggered by something relevant. I know he was afraid of you, for instance. He didn't believe you'd really turned against Voldemort. He hadn't intended to provoke Snape, but the potion's master's face hardened. Mind your language, Potter. The Dark Lord's name is not to be thrown about carelessly. Dumbledore says fear of a name, the headmaster, Snape interrupted icily, has exceptional magical protections and abilities. You, despite your recent acquisition, do not. Names have power. Remember that. Harry fell silent, acknowledging the point despite his reluctance to give Snape any ground. Now, Snape continued, occlumency is the magical defense of the mind against external penetration. It is an obscure branch of magic, but highly useful, particularly in your circumstances. He paused, his black eyes boring into Harry's. The mind is not a book, to be opened at will and examined at leisure. Thoughts are not etched on the inside of skulls, to be perused by any invader. The mind is a complex and many-layered thing, or most minds, he added with a sneer. Harry bit back a retort, feeling Travers' magic stirring in response to his irritation. You now face two distinct challenges, Snape continued. First, organizing and containing the foreign memories and magical knowledge you've absorbed. Second, protecting your mind against further intrusion, both from the Dark Lord and from any additional magic you may acquire. The way Snape said acquire made it sound like Harry was collecting magical powers for fun. I will attempt to penetrate your mind, Snape explained, drawing his wand. You will attempt to resist. Prepare yourself. Legilimens. Harry had no time to brace himself before Snape's spell hit him. Suddenly, his mind was flooded with memories, running from Dudley's gang at school, Hagrid telling him he was a wizard, the basilisk lunging at him in the chamber, Sirius falling through the veil. Wait. That last memory wasn't his. He hadn't seen Sirius fall through any veil. It was Travers' memory, witnessing something in the Department of Mysteries. With a desperate effort, Harry focused on the boundary between his magic and Travers, trying to push Snape away from the foreign memories. To his surprise, it worked. The invasion faltered, then withdrew. Snape regarded him with narrowed eyes. Interesting. You instinctively protected the absorbed memories rather than your own. Harry leaned against a chair, breathing heavily. I didn't mean to. It just happened. The foreign magic is defending itself, Snape observed. It recognizes me as a potential threat to its integration. It's not just magic, Harry said, disturbed by the implication. It's like a piece of Travers' consciousness survived inside me. Snape's expression became unreadable again. That is, concerning. We must establish proper barriers immediately. He raised his wand again. This time, focus on separating your own thoughts and memories from those you've absorbed. Visualize a wall between them. Legilimens. The lesson continued for nearly 2 hours, growing more intense with each attempt. Harry made minimal progress, succeeding occasionally in blocking Snape from specific memories but failing to establish any lasting mental barriers. The most disturbing aspect was how Travers' magic kept interfering, sometimes helping Harry resist Snape's probes but other times deliberately exposing certain memories, particularly those involving Harry's connection to Voldemort. By the end, Harry was mentally exhausted and developing a splitting headache. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he pushed himself up from the floor after a particularly brutal mental assault. Enough for today, Snape said, looking somewhat drained himself. Your mind is even more chaotic than I anticipated. The foreign elements are not passive, they actively resist compartmentalization. Harry wiped his sleeve across his forehead. Is that normal with, whatever this is? There is no normal for your situation, Potter, Snape replied curtly. The absorption of magical essence through a blood curse is virtually unprecedented in modern times. But it has happened before? Harry asked, seizing on Snape's qualification. Snape hesitated, seeming to debate how much to reveal. There are historical accounts. Ancient wizards who could consume the power of their defeated enemies. The practice was considered the darkest of arts, even in less enlightened times. I'm not consuming anyone. Harry protested. It happens automatically when they try to kill me. Intent matters little in the darkest magic, Snape said coldly. The result is what concerns the wizarding world. And the result, Potter, is that you are absorbing the essence of other wizards and growing more powerful with each absorption. The implication hung in the air between them. Harry felt sick. I didn't ask for this. You rarely ask for the trouble that finds you, Snape acknowledged, his tone marginally less hostile. Nevertheless, you must master this ability before it masters you. Practice the separation technique daily. We will continue tomorrow. He swept toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Potter. The Dark Lord must not learn the full extent of this development. If he discovers what you can do, he'll either try to use me or destroy me, Harry finished grimly. Snape nodded once, then left, his black robes billowing behind him. Harry remained in the drawing room, trying to process everything. The headache pounding behind his eyes made it difficult to think clearly. One thing was certain, this blood curse complicated an already dangerous situation. He needed to understand it better, to gain control before someone else tried to kill him and he absorbed even more foreign magic. But how? Snape's occlumency lessons seemed likely to drive him mad before they helped. With a weary sigh, Harry headed back to find Ron and Hermione. If anyone could help him research blood curses and magical absorption, it was Hermione. As he reached for the drawing room door, a strange prickling sensation ran down his spine. He turned, scanning the empty room, suddenly certain he was being watched. There was nothing there, just dusty furniture and faded tapestries. But the feeling persisted, a crawling awareness that something was off. Hello? He called, feeling foolish. No response. Yet as he turned back to the door, he caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of his eye, a shadow that seemed to move independently from any object in the room. Harry drew his wand instinctively. Show yourself. The shadow rippled, then solidified into a vaguely humanoid shape that hovered near the ceiling. It had no distinct features, just a darker patch of air that seemed to absorb the dim light from the room's lamps. What are you? Harry demanded, fighting to keep his voice steady. The shadow didn't respond verbally, but Harry felt a strange pressure in his mind, not invasive like Snape's legitimacy, but more like someone knocking politely at a door. Against his better judgment, Harry lowered his mental barriers slightly. A single concept floated into his consciousness: observer. You're watching me? Harry asked, keeping his wand trained on the shadow. Why? Another concept formed: change. Potential. Danger. I'm dangerous. Harry pressed. The shadow rippled again, seeming agitated. Not yet. Could be. Others coming. A chill ran down Harry's spine. What others? Death Eaters? Worse. Collectors. Feeders. Drawn to new power. Before Harry could ask more questions, the shadow dissipated, melting into the general gloom of the room as if it had never existed. Harry stood frozen, wondering if he'd imagined the entire encounter. But the lingering sense of unease felt too real to dismiss. What had the shadow meant by collectors and feeders? And why had it appeared to him specifically? He had a sinking feeling that the blood curse was attracting attention from more than just Voldemort and the Ministry, attention from entities he didn't understand and couldn't prepare for. With one last uneasy glance around the drawing room, Harry left to find his friends, the Shadow's warning echoing in his mind, others coming. The blood curse was just the beginning of his problems. Chapter 2, Hunter and hunted 3 weeks at Grimmauld Place, and Harry was going stir-crazy. The gloomy townhouse felt more like a prison than a sanctuary, especially with Snape's daily occlumency sessions grinding him down. His only consolation was having Ron and Hermione around, though even they walked on eggshells sometimes, especially when his magic flared unpredictably. "Try again," Hermione urged, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the library across from him. "Focus on separating the magical signatures." Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on the now familiar exercise. In his mind's eye, he could see his own golden magic intertwined with Travers' darker purple energy. After weeks of practice, he could maintain the boundary visualization for nearly an hour before exhaustion set in. "It's getting easier," he admitted, opening his eyes. "But I still can't fully separate them." "That's because they're not meant to be separated," said a dreamy voice from the doorway. "They're becoming you." Harry turned to find Luna Lovegood standing there, her protuberant eyes studying him with fascination. She'd arrived yesterday with her father, who was apparently doing some work for the Order. "What do you mean, Luna?" Hermione asked, a slight edge to her voice. She still hadn't fully warmed to Luna's unusual perspectives. Luna drifted into the room, perching on the edge of a dusty armchair. "It's like when two streams join to form a river. You can see the different colors at first, but eventually, they blend completely. Fighting it only creates turbulence." Harry considered this. Luna's odd insights often contain surprising wisdom. "So you think I should just accept it? Let Travers' magic merge with mine completely?" Not uncritically, Luna replied, twirling a strand of her dirty blonde hair. "Rivers choose their paths, after all. But fighting the merging itself might be why you're having headaches." Harry blinked in surprise. He hadn't told anyone about the persistent headaches following his occlumency sessions. "How did you? The rackspurts around your head have a very distinct pattern," Luna said matter-of-factly. "Classic sign of magical resistance tension." Before Harry could respond to this dubious explanation, the library door burst open again. Ron stumbled in, breathing hard, clutching a newspaper. "Harry, you need to see this," he gasped, thrusting the Daily Prophet into Harry's hands. "It just arrived." Harry's stomach dropped as he saw the front page. His own face stared back at him, alongside a moving photo of what appeared to be the aftermath at Privet Drive, Aurors examining empty robes on the ground. The headline screamed, "Boy WHO lived absorbs Death Eater's magic ministry investigates vampiric new power, bloody hell." Harry breathed, scanning the article. It was worse than he'd feared. In a shocking development that has the wizarding world reeling, Harry Potter, 15, already known for surviving the killing curse as an infant, has reportedly developed a disturbing new ability, absorbing the magical essence of wizards who attack him. According to Ministry sources, Potter was involved in an altercation with suspected Death Eaters at his Muggle residence 3 weeks ago. Witnesses report that when one assailant cast the killing curse at Potter, the spell rebounded in an unprecedented manner, causing the attacker to be consumed by Potter, who absorbed his magical abilities. All that remained were empty robes and a broken wand, reports Auror Dawlish, who was among the first responders. Potter's magical signature was significantly altered following the incident. Minister Fudge has expressed grave concern about this development. "We have never seen this type of magic before," the minister stated. "It raises serious questions about whether young Mr. Potter is still fully human, or if he has become something else, something potentially dangerous to the wizarding community." The minister has announced the formation of a special committee to investigate Potter's condition and determine appropriate containment measures. Harry couldn't read any more. He threw the paper down, his hands shaking. How did they find out? The Order was keeping it quiet. "Someone leaked it," Hermione said grimly, picking up the paper to continue reading. "Oh, this is bad. There's a quote from Umbridge calling you a magical vampire who represents a clear and present danger to magical society." "Magical vampire?" Harry repeated incredulously. "That's not accurate at all," Luna said with a frown. "Vampires consume life force. You're more of a magical amalgamator." Ron looked bewildered. "A what?" "Someone who combines different elements," Hermione explained automatically, still scanning the article. "But that's not the point. The Ministry is painting Harry as a danger to society. They're establishing grounds to take you into custody, for your own protection and the safety of others." "They can't do that," Ron protested. "He hasn't broken any laws." "There aren't laws for this situation," Hermione replied grimly. "That gives them leeway to create new ones specifically targeting Harry." Harry felt Travers' magic stirring inside him, responding to his rising anger. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, and the pages of the newspaper began to frost over in Hermione's hands. "Harry," she said cautiously. "Your magic is, I know," he said through gritted teeth, struggling to regain control. "Give me a minute." He closed his eyes, visualizing the boundary between his magic and Travers. Instead of fighting to separate them, as he'd been doing in his occlumency sessions, he tried Luna's approach, accepting the merger while guiding its direction. To his surprise, the volatile energy settled more quickly than usual. When he opened his eyes, the temperature had normalized, though a light dusting of frost still covered the prophet. "That was actually better," Hermione observed, looking impressed. "What did you do differently?" Harry glanced at Luna. "I stopped fighting the merger and focused on guiding it instead." Luna smiled serenely. "The river finds its path." The library door opened yet again, this time revealing Sirius, Lupin, and Mr. Weasley. Their grave expressions confirmed they'd seen the article. "Emergency order meeting downstairs," Sirius announced. "Harry, you should join us. This concerns you directly." "What about us?" Ron demanded. "You three stay here," Mr. Weasley said firmly. "This is order business." "But Harry's our age," Hermione protested. "Harry is the subject of the discussion," Lupin explained gently. "We need his input on how to proceed." Harry followed the adults downstairs, leaving his frustrated friends behind. The kitchen was packed with order members when they arrived. Dumbledore sat at the head of the table, his expression somber as he read the prophet. Moody stood nearby, magical eyes spinning wildly, while Snape lurked in a shadowy corner, his face unreadable. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore said, looking up. "Please, join us. We were just discussing this unfortunate development." "How did they find out?" Harry asked as he took the empty seat beside Sirius. "Who leaked it to the prophet?" "We believe someone at St. Mungo's," Kingsley's deep voice replied from across the table. "When we brought Tonks in for treatment that night, the healers detected the unusual magical signature you left on her when you helped her. They reported it to the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. And from there, it was a short hop to Fudge's office," Moody growled. "The minister's looking for any angle to discredit you and Dumbledore." "This goes beyond discrediting," Dumbledore said gravely. "The Ministry is framing Harry as a potential threat to magical society, laying groundwork for intervention." "What kind of intervention?" Harry asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Detention at the Department of Mysteries," Kingsley answered. "Under the guise of studying your condition, they want to contain you and understand the nature of your new abilities." "You mean experiment on me," Harry said flatly. No one contradicted him. "We won't let that happen," Sirius said fiercely, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. "The Ministry is the least of our concerns," Snape spoke up from his corner. "The Dark Lord now knows of Potter's condition. He's already adapting his strategy." All eyes turned to Snape. As a spy in Voldemort's inner circle, his intelligence was invaluable, if not always delivered kindly. What's he planning? Harry asked directly. Snape's dark eyes fixed on him. The Dark Lord has forbidden any Death Eater from attempting to kill you. Instead, he's ordered your capture, alive and relatively unharmed. He wants to study the blood curse himself, Lupin surmised. Precisely, Snape confirmed. He believes that since the curse was activated by his use of Potter's blood, he may be able to reverse it, and claim the absorbed power for himself. A chill ran through the room. There's more, Snape continued. The Dark Lord is not the only one interested in Potter's new abilities. Word has spread through less savory magical communities. There are those who view Potter as a challenge. What do you mean? Mrs. Weasley asked, looking alarmed. Power seekers, Moody answered before Snape could respond. Dark wizards who want to test themselves against Potter, to prove they can defeat him without killing him, or to try killing him and absorbing his power instead. That's insane, Harry protested. They'd die like Travers did. Not everyone believes that, Kingsley pointed out. Some will convince themselves they're stronger, more skilled, more worthy of success. In short, Dumbledore summarized, Harry now faces threats from three directions: the Ministry seeking to contain him, Voldemort attempting to capture and study him, and independent wizards hoping to challenge or exploit his condition. The reality of his situation sank in. Harry was no longer just a symbol of resistance against Voldemort, he was a magical curiosity, a prize to be claimed, a phenomenon to be studied. So what do we do? He asked, hating how young his voice sounded. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. We must move you from Grimmauld Place. The prophet mentioned that you're in a secure location under order protection. It won't take long for someone to make the connection to the Black family home. Where will he go? Sirius demanded. Hogwarts isn't in session, and apparently my house isn't secure enough. I've prepared a location, Dumbledore replied. A small cottage in the Welsh countryside, under the Fidelius charm with myself as secret keeper. It has extensive magical protections beyond even those here. When do we leave? Harry asked. Tonight, Dumbledore said firmly. Alastor, Kingsley, and Nymphadora will accompany you. It's Tonks, came an automatic correction from down the table. What about Ron and Hermione? Harry asked. The thought of being isolated from his friends after weeks of confinement at Grimmauld Place was unbearable. Dumbledore hesitated. I had not planned to include them. The danger, they've been in danger with me before, Harry interrupted. And they're already targets because of their connection to me. At least at this safe house, they'd have proper protection. Mrs. Weasley looked ready to object, but Mr. Weasley placed a calming hand on her arm. Harry has a point, Molly. Ron and Hermione are already associated with him in the public mind. If someone wanted to get to Harry. The implication hung heavily in the air. Very well, Dumbledore conceded. Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger may join you, provided their parents agree. He glanced at the Weasleys, who nodded reluctantly. And Hermione's parents? Harry asked. I will personally visit them this afternoon to explain the situation and request their permission, Dumbledore assured him. There's one more thing we need to address, Lupin said quietly. Harry's training. He needs to learn to control his new abilities, not just contain them. I'll continue the occlumency lessons, Snape stated, though he didn't look pleased about it. Occlumency isn't enough, Moody growled. The boy needs combat training, how to use these new abilities in a fight without losing control. I can help with that, Tonks volunteered. I've got leave from Auror duties for another week while my leg finishes healing. And I'll assist with the theoretical aspects, Lupin added. Understanding the nature of the magic he's absorbed. Harry felt a surge of gratitude. Despite the danger he posed, these people were still willing to help him, to treat him as Harry rather than a magical anomaly. It's settled, then, Dumbledore concluded. Harry, Mr. Weasley, and Miss Granger will relocate to the safe house tonight, with appropriate protection and training staff. I suggest you all prepare immediately. We'll depart at midnight. As the meeting dispersed, Sirius pulled Harry aside. I'll be joining you at the safe house too, he said in a low voice. No arguments from Dumbledore this time, not when my godson's being hunted from all sides. Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Having Sirius with him would make the isolation more bearable. Thanks, he said simply. Sirius squeezed his shoulder. We'll get through this, Harry. And we'll find a way to turn this blood curse to our advantage. As Harry headed upstairs to inform Ron and Hermione of the plan, he found himself hoping Sirius was right. Because right now, the curse felt less like an advantage and more like a target painted on his back. The Welsh countryside stretched out beneath a blanket of stars, peaceful and seemingly untouched by the brewing conflict in the wizarding world. Harry stood at the window of the cottage, watching for any sign of movement in the surrounding woods. They'd arrived 3 hours ago via a complex series of portkeys designed to confuse any potential trackers. The cottage itself was charming but modest, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen/dining area, a comfortable sitting room, and an unexpected addition, a reinforced basement converted into a training room. Can't sleep? Hermione's voice came from behind him. Harry turned to find her standing in the sitting room doorway, wrapped in a dressing gown, her hair even bushier than usual. Just thinking, he replied, turning back to the window. Hermione joined him, peering out at the moonlit landscape. It's beautiful here. Peaceful. For now, Harry said grimly. How long before someone breaks through the protections? The Fidelius charm is nearly unbreakable as long as the secret keeper remains loyal, Hermione reminded him. And Dumbledore added layers of other protections too. Harry sighed. I know. I just can't shake the feeling that I'm putting everyone in danger by being here. You, Ron, Sirius, Tonks, Lupin. We chose to be here, Hermione said firmly. And honestly, Harry, would you rather face all this alone? Before he could answer, a flicker of movement at the edge of the woods caught his attention. Harry tensed, focusing on the spot where he'd seen it. What? Hermione asked, following his gaze. Thought I saw something, Harry murmured, reaching for his wand. There, by that big oak tree. Hermione squinted into the darkness. I don't see anything. Harry wasn't convinced. Since absorbing Travers' magic, his vision had improved substantially, especially at night. He could now make out details in near darkness that others couldn't perceive. Wake Moody, he said quietly. Something's out there. Hermione hesitated only briefly before hurrying to alert the Exor, who had taken the first watch in the kitchen. Harry kept his eyes fixed on the woods, watching for any further movement. There, another shadow moving between trees, too deliberate to be an animal. And another, approaching from a different angle. Whoever they were coordinating their movements, surrounding the cottage. Moody appeared at his side, magical eye whirring as it scanned the perimeter. Multiple hostiles, he confirmed grimly. At least 6, approaching slowly. Testing the wards. Death Eaters? Harry asked. Moody's eye narrowed. Don't think so. No dark marks that I can detect. Different magical signatures, mixed group. Bounty hunters, Sirius suggested as he joined them, hastily pulling on a robe. The Prophet article probably inspired some opportunists. Wake the others, Moody ordered. Defensive positions. Potter, stay in the center of the house where they can't target you directly. Harry bristled. I'm not hiding while everyone else fights. Not asking you to hide, boy, Moody growled. Tactical positioning. You're the target, they have to come through us to get to you. Use the advantage. Ron stumbled into the room, looking sleepy but alert, his wand already drawn. What's happening? We've got company, Sirius informed him tersely. Multiple hostiles surrounding the cottage. Ron's face hardened with determination. Where do you want me? Back door with Lupin, Moody directed. Granger, you're with Tonks covering the east side. Black, take the west. I'll handle the front approach. Everyone moved to their positions with practiced efficiency, the result of order drills they'd been running since arriving. Harry reluctantly took up his assigned spot in the central hallway, where he could quickly reinforce any position that came under heavy attack. The minutes stretched in tense silence. Harry could feel the wards around the cottage humming with energy as they responded to probing spells from the attackers. Occasionally, a shimmer of blue or gold would flash across the windows as a more aggressive spell was deflected. They're testing for weaknesses, Tonks called softly from her position. Methodical. These aren't random glory seekers, they're professionals. Agreed, came Lupin's voice from the back of the house. The coordination suggests mercenaries or freelance cursebreakers. The ward suddenly flared brilliantly, and a concussive boom shook the cottage. They're making their move. Moody bellowed. Constant vigilance. The attack came from all sides simultaneously, blasting curses targeting the windows, disillusionment charms concealing the attackers' exact positions, and what felt like systematic dismantling of the outer protective layers. These aren't amateurs. Sirius shouted over the cacophony of spellfire. They know what they're doing. Harry felt frustratingly useless in his central position while his friends defended the perimeter. Through the windows, he could see flashes of light as spells flew back and forth, illuminating cloaked figures darting between trees for cover. A tremendous crash came from the east side of the cottage, followed by Hermione's shout, "They've breached the outer ward. Hold your positions." Moody commanded. They still have to get through the physical structure, which is reinforced. Harry's instincts screamed at him to join the fight, but he forced himself to maintain position as Moody had instructed. If he could draw the attackers into the central area where their attention would be focused on him, his defenders could flank them. Another explosion rocked the cottage, this time from Lupin and Ron's position. Back door compromised. Lupin called. 2 hostiles entering. I've got movement on the west side too. Sirius reported. They were being infiltrated from multiple directions at once. Harry raised his wand, ready to face whoever came down the hallway first. He didn't have to wait long. 2 figures in dark leather armor, not Death Eater robes, sprinted around the corner from the back door, firing stunning spells as they came. Harry deflected them with a shield charm, then countered with a disarming spell that caught one of the attackers by surprise. The wand flew from the first attacker's hand, but his partner was more skilled, deflecting Harry's follow-up stunner and advancing with determined focus. "Potter," the man called in a thick Eastern European accent. "We don't want to harm you. Our client merely wants to examine your condition." "Not interested," Harry replied, firing a blasting curse at the ceiling above the man. Debris rained down, forcing the attacker to shield himself and creating momentary cover for Harry. From behind the attackers, Ron appeared, firing a well-placed impedimenta that caught the wandless mercenary in the back. The man went down hard. The remaining attacker spun to face this new threat, giving Harry an opening. Drawing on Travers' knowledge, he cast a spell he'd never used before, Accio Dispergo. The bone-shattering curse struck the attacker's wand arm, eliciting a howl of pain as the man's wrist and forearm crumpled. His wand clattered to the floor. Stupefy. Ron finished the job, dropping the injured mercenary with a clean stunning spell. "Nice work," Harry acknowledged, moving forward to secure the fallen attackers. "Blimey, Harry," Ron said, looking at the man whose arm Harry had shattered. "That was brutal." Harry felt a twinge of guilt. The bone-shattering curse wasn't something he would normally use, it had been Travers' instinctive choice, rising to the surface in the heat of battle. "Sorry," he muttered. "It just came out." No time for further reflection, more sounds of battle echoed from the front of the cottage. Harry and Ron raced to assist, finding Moody locked in combat with a tall, slender wizard whose speed and precision marked him as the leader of the attackers. "Stay back, Potter." Moody shouted, deflecting a series of curses that left smoking holes in the walls where they struck. "This one's mine." But the attacking wizard had spotted Harry. A predatory smile spread across his face, handsome features marred by a long scar running from temple to jaw. "There you are," he said, his voice surprisingly cultured. "The magical vampire himself." "Don't call me that," Harry snapped, raising his wand. The man laughed. "Oh, I mean it as a compliment. What you did to Travers was impressive. My employer is very interested in how you did it, and whether the ability can be replicated." "Your employer can go to hell," Harry replied. Stupefy. The man sidestepped the stunning spell with casual grace. Now. There's no need for hostilities. We're offering you protection, research facilities, expert guidance in developing your abilities. Certainly better than hiding in a cottage with a handful of has-been protectors." "Enough talk," Moody growled. "Confringo." The blasting curse forced the mercenary leader to defend himself, breaking his focus on Harry. The battle resumed in earnest, spells flying so fast that Harry could barely track them. He joined Moody in pressing the attack, working in tandem with the ex-Auror to drive the skilled opponent back toward the shattered front door. Ron provided supporting fire from a flanking position, his tactical mind finding openings in the enemy's defense. The mercenary leader was good, very good, but he was outnumbered and gradually losing ground. When a cutting curse from Moody sliced across his shoulder, drawing blood, his confident demeanor finally cracked. "This isn't over, Potter," he called, backing toward the exit. "There's nowhere you can hide that we won't find you. The price on your head just keeps rising." With a final slashing movement of his wand, he created a blinding flash of light. By the time Harry's vision cleared, the man had disappeared into the night. "After him." Moody barked, limping toward the door. "Wait." Tonk's voice called from the east side. "We've got a situation here." Harry and Moody rushed to find Tonks and Hermione standing over an unconscious attacker, but it wasn't the mercenary that concerned them. On the man's exposed forearm was a dark mark. "Death Eater," Tonks confirmed grimly. "Mixed in with the mercenary group. Voldemort's covering all angles," Harry realized. "Sending his people along with hired hunters to improve his chances. Which means our location is more compromised than we thought," Sirius said as he joined them, sporting a cut above his eye but otherwise unharmed. "If Death Eaters know where to find us, we need to move," Lupin finished, entering with a slightly limping Ron. "Immediately." Moody's magical eye spun wildly, scanning the surrounding woods. No immediate pursuit, but they could be regrouping. "Start packing, essential items only. We'll port key to the fallback location in 15 minutes. As everyone scattered to gather their belongings, Harry knelt beside the stunned Death Eater. Unlike the mercenaries in their practical leather armor, this man wore the traditional black robes of Voldemort's followers beneath a disguising cloak. Harry felt a strange pull toward the unconscious man, an instinctive awareness of his magical signature. After weeks of living with Travers' absorbed magic, he becomes sensitive to other wizards' magical cores. "I know what you're thinking," Sirius said quietly, crouching beside him. "And the answer is no." "I wasn't, you were," Sirius countered firmly. "Wondering what would happen if you absorbed his power too. Whether it would make you stronger." Harry couldn't deny it. The thought had crossed his mind, not as a serious consideration, but as a fleeting temptation. "It's the blood curse," Sirius continued. "According to Dumbledore, it creates a hunger. Each absorption makes the next one more tempting." "I wouldn't actually do it," Harry insisted. "I'm not a murderer." "I know that," Sirius assured him, squeezing his shoulder. "But we need to be honest about what you're facing. This curse isn't just changing your magic, it's influencing your thoughts, your instincts." Harry nodded grimly. "What do we do with him?" he asked, nodding toward the Death Eater. "Moody will handle it," Sirius replied. "Probably extract any useful information, then obliviate him about the location before dropping him somewhere the Ministry can find him. They left the unconscious man under Moody's watchful eye and joined the others in hasty packing. 15 minutes later, they were gathered in the sitting room, belongings shrunk and stowed in pockets, wounds hastily treated. The fallback location is another cottage, north of here, in the Scottish Highlands, Lupin explained, holding out an old teakettle that had been converted into a portkey. Dumbledore prepared several safe houses, each with different protective enchantments. What about the prisoners? Hermione asked, glancing at the bound mercenaries. Already taken care of, Moody grunted. They'll wake up with no memory of where they were or who they encountered, just a headache and a failure report to their employer. Everyone grabbed hold of the teakettle. Harry felt the familiar hook behind his navel as the portkey activated, whisking them away seconds before a new wave of attackers breached the cottage's final defenses. The Scottish safe house proved more secure but less comfortable than the Welsh cottage. Built like a small fortress of stone, it perched on a rocky outcrop overlooking a desolate moor. The windows were narrow slits, the walls thick enough to withstand serious magical assault, and the interior sparse and functional. Cheerful place, Ron commented as they explored their new accommodation. It's not meant to be cheerful, Moody replied gruffly. It's meant to be defensible. One approach path, clear lines of sight in all directions, and enough magical reinforcement to withstand a siege. How long are we staying here? Hermione asked, examining the bare stone walls of the main room. Until Dumbledore secures a more permanent arrangement, Lupin answered. He's working on something at Hogwarts, a secure area where Harry can train and study without endangering the other students once term begins. Harry felt a rush of relief at the mention of Hogwarts. Despite everything, he'd been worried that he might not be allowed to return to school. So I can go back, he asked. Even with. He gestured vaguely at himself. Dumbledore is headmaster, Lupin reminded him with a small smile. The Ministry may control much, but they cannot prevent him from accepting any student he deems worthy of education at Hogwarts. They'll try, though, Tonks added, morphing her hair from pink to a more somber blue. Fudge is on the warpath. The latest prophet is calling for your voluntary surrender to Ministry custody for evaluation and containment of dangerous magical anomalies. Harry snorted. As if I'd voluntarily let Umbridge experiment on me. Precisely why we're keeping you well away from Ministry influence, Sirius said, clapping him on the shoulder. Now, how about we make this dreary fortress a bit more livable? I'm thinking color-changing charms on these depressing walls. They spent the rest of the day securing and personalizing the safe house, establishing watch rotations, and setting up a new training area in what might once have been a great hall. By evening, the stone fortress felt marginally more hospitable, with a fire roaring in the massive hearth and furniture transfigured from various rocks and branches. After dinner, a simple but hearty stew prepared by Lupin, who proved surprisingly capable in the kitchen, Tonks approached Harry with a determined expression. Time to start your combat training, she announced. If we're going to be fighting off mercenaries and Death Eaters, you need to learn to use your new abilities effectively. Now? Harry asked, glancing at the others relaxing by the fire. No time like the present, Tonks replied cheerfully. Besides, night training is valuable. Most attacks happen in darkness. Reluctantly, Harry followed her to the great hall they'd converted for training. The stone floor had been charmed with cushioning spells, and practice dummies stood at one end. Right, Tonks said, rolling up her sleeves. From what I've seen, you've got access to Travers' magical knowledge but not his muscle memory or combat experience. That means you know spells theoretically but haven't developed the reflexes to use them effectively. Harry nodded. That sounds right. Sometimes in a fight, his spells come to mind, but I hesitate because they feel unfamiliar. Exactly, Tonks confirmed. So we need to integrate his knowledge with your existing skills. Start with something simple, show me a spell you've learned from him that you're comfortable using. Harry thought for a moment, then aimed at one of the practice dummies. Flagranti, he cast, hitting the dummy squarely in the chest. The dummy began to glow red-hot, smoke rising from its surface. The burning touch curse, Tonks observed. Nasty in a fight, makes anything you hit too hot to touch. Good choice for incapacitating without serious injury. She doused the dummy with water from her wand. How did that feel to cast? A bit strange, Harry admitted. Like I know exactly how the magic should flow, but my body isn't used to channeling it that way. That's the disconnect we need to address, Tonks explained. Your magical pathways need to adapt to these new spells. It's like building muscle memory, but for magic. For the next 2 hours, Tonks drilled Harry relentlessly, having him cast various spells from Travers' repertoire, gradually increasing in complexity and power. She focused on defensive magic and non-lethal combat spells, steering clear of the darker curses that occasionally surfaced in Harry's mind. By the end of the session, Harry was magically exhausted but felt more connected to the foreign abilities he'd absorbed. The spells flowed more naturally, requiring less conscious thought and producing more consistent results. Good progress, Tonks approved, looking only slightly less tired than Harry felt. Your magical core is adapting quickly. Tomorrow we'll work on combining your own spellwork with Travers' knowledge, creating hybrid techniques that will be uniquely yours. Thanks, Tonks, Harry said sincerely. This helps, makes it feel less like I'm possessed and more like I've just learned new skills. Tonks nodded understandingly. That's the goal. The magic is yours now, Harry, regardless of where it came from. The sooner you fully claim it, the better you'll control it. As they rejoined the others by the fire, Harry found Ron and Hermione deep in conversation with Lupin, surrounded by books and parchment. What's all this? Harry asked, dropping into an armchair with a weary sigh. Research on blood curses, Hermione replied, not looking up from her notes. Professor Lupin found some fascinating references in these old black family books Sirius brought. Anything useful? Harry asked hopefully. Lupin's expression was cautiously optimistic. Possibly. We found historical accounts of similar magic, an ancient Roman wizard named Caius Marius who reportedly absorbed the powers of 7 rival mages after they attempted a ritualistic execution. What happened to him? Harry asked. A shadow crossed Lupin's face. The accounts vary. Some say he became one of the most powerful wizards of his age, a respected leader. Others claim the multiple absorptions drove him mad, until he could no longer distinguish his own personality from those he'd consumed. That's reassuring, Harry muttered. The key difference, Hermione interjected quickly, is that Marius actively sought to absorb his enemy's power through a dark ritual. Your situation is defensive, it only happens when someone tries to kill you. For now, Harry said quietly. But Sirius mentioned that the curse creates a kind of hunger. That each absorption makes the next more tempting. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. That's why this training is so important, Lupin finally said. Not just the magical control Tonks is teaching you, but the mental discipline from occlumency. You need both to resist the curse's more addictive aspects. Speaking of which, came Snape's silky voice from the doorway, we have a session scheduled, Potter. Harry suppressed a groan. After 2 hours of intensive magical training with Tonks, the last thing he wanted was Snape rummaging through his mind. Can't it wait until morning? Sirius asked irritably. He's exhausted. Mental fatigue provides valuable training conditions, Snape replied coldly. In a real confrontation, Potter will rarely be fresh and well-rested. Reluctantly, Harry followed Snape to a small side room that had been designated for occlumency practice. The potions master closed the door and turned to face him, dark eyes calculating. I understand you've been experimenting with the absorbed magic, Snape stated without preamble. Tonks is helping me control it, Harry replied defensively. Control is not mastery, Snape countered. And neither will matter if your mind remains an open book to the Dark Lord, or to the foreign consciousness you've incorporated. Harry couldn't argue with that logic, frustrating as it was. Fine. Let's get on with it. Snape raised his wand. Focus on the boundary visualization we've practiced. This time, I want you to create a third space, neutral ground where both magical signatures can exist without either dominating. Legilimens. The mental invasion came without further warning. Images flashed before Harry's mind, the attack at the Welsh cottage, his training session with Tonks, the temptation he'd felt looking at the captured Death Eater. Harry struggled to implement Snape's instructions, visualizing not just the boundary between his golden magic and Travers' purple, but a new space where they blended into a controlled, coppery mixture. To his surprise, the visualization worked better than previous attempts. When Snape probed toward memories influenced by Travers' consciousness, Harry was able to direct him to this neutral territory instead, preventing access to either pure magical signature. After several attempts, Snape lowered his wand, a flicker of something almost like approval crossing his features. An improvement, he acknowledged reluctantly. The neutral ground approach suits your particular condition better than strict compartmentalization. Coming from Snape, this was high praise indeed. Does that mean we can stop these lessons? Harry asked hopefully. Snape's lip curled. Hardly. We've merely established a foundation. Now we must build upon it, creating defenses that will withstand the Dark Lord's considerably more powerful mental assaults. Harry sighed. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. There is another matter we must address, Snape continued, an unusual hesitation in his voice. The Dark Lord has been experimenting with methods to extract magical essence. He believes he can reverse the blood curse and claim the power you've absorbed, along with your own. A chill ran down Harry's spine. Is that possible? Theoretically, Snape admitted. Ancient Egyptian wizards developed rituals to transfer magical abilities from one person to another, primarily as a means of punishment for criminals or inheritance for dynasty succession. The Dark Lord has obtained scrolls describing these rituals and is adapting them to his purpose. How close is he? Harry asked, feeling sick. The ritual requires specific conditions and ingredients, Snape replied. Including your physical presence and, most importantly, the full moon. He's targeting the September full moon for the attempt. That's only 3 weeks away, Harry realized with growing horror. Indeed. Which is why your training must accelerate. You need to not only control the absorbed magic but fully integrate it, make it so completely your own that even the original ritual that created the blood curse cannot separate it from your core. Harry absorbed this information with grim determination. What do I need to do? Continue your work with Tonks and Lupin. I will adapt our occlumency sessions to focus on magical integration rather than simple compartmentalization. Snape's dark eyes bored into Harry's. And you must be prepared for the possibility that the Dark Lord will attempt to capture you before the full moon. He'll have to find me first, Harry pointed out. Do not underestimate his resources, Snape warned. The attack tonight was merely the first wave. There will be others, more skilled, better informed, and increasingly desperate as the full moon approaches. With that ominous prediction, Snape ended the session. Harry returned to the main room, his mind spinning with the new information. He found only Ron still awake, stoking the fire as the others had retired to bed. That bad, huh? Ron asked, noting Harry's expression. Harry dropped into a chair beside his friend and quietly related what Snape had told him about Voldemort's plans. Bloody hell, Ron whispered when he finished. A ritual to steal your magic. Can he really do that? Snape thinks it's possible, Harry replied grimly. And if anyone would know about obscure dark magic, it's Snape. Ron was silent for a moment, staring into the flames. You know, he finally said, everyone's focusing on defending you, keeping you hidden. Maybe that's the wrong approach. Harry looked at him curiously. What do you mean? Well, if you know who's gathering ingredients and preparing this ritual, maybe we should be focusing on disrupting his plans instead of just waiting for him to come after you. You're suggesting we take the fight to Voldemort? Harry asked, surprised by Ron's strategic thinking. Ron nodded, his face serious in the firelight. Find out where he's keeping these Egyptian scrolls, or whatever rare ingredients he needs for the ritual, and destroy them. Without the ritual, you're just a target he can't kill, not an immediate threat to his power. Harry considered this. It was a bold strategy, aggressive rather than defensive. The kind of approach Travers might have suggested, which made Harry both attracted to it and wary of it. It would be incredibly dangerous, he pointed out. More dangerous than waiting for him to perfect a ritual to strip your magic and kill you. Ron countered. Harry had no answer for that. Just think about it, Ron said, standing and stretching. I'll mention it to Hermione in the morning, she'll probably have 10 reasons why it won't work, but I dunno, it feels better than just hiding and training and hoping for the best. As Ron headed off to bed, Harry remained by the fire, turning the idea over in his mind. Taking the initiative against Voldemort was risky, but it offered something he desperately needed, a chance to regain control of his situation instead of merely reacting to threats. The foreign magic inside him resonated with the concept, Travers' more aggressive instincts finding alignment with Harry's own determination. For once, the two aspects of his magical core felt unified rather than in conflict. Perhaps that was the key to mastering the blood curse, finding purposes where his original self and the absorbed elements could work in harmony rather than opposition. With that thought, Harry finally retired to bed, his dreams filled not with nightmares of absorption or pursuit, but with plans and possibilities, ways to turn his curse into the weapon Sirius had suggested it could become. A week passed in the Scottish safe house, settling into a routine of intensive training punctuated by security checks and planning sessions. Harry's days were structured around combat practice with Tonks in the mornings, theoretical magic with Lupin in the afternoons, and occlumency with Snape every second evening. His progress was remarkable, even Snape grudgingly acknowledged improvement in his mental defenses, while Tonks was increasingly impressed by his combat adaptability. "You're developing your own style," she observed after a particularly grueling dueling session. "It's not just Travers' techniques or your old habits, it's something new. More fluid, more intuitive." Harry had noticed the change himself. He was no longer fighting his absorbed magic or rigidly separating it from his own. Instead, he'd begun blending them, creating hybrid spells that combined Travers' precision with his own raw power. The physical changes continued as well. His vision had improved to the point where he rarely needed glasses except for reading. His reflexes were sharper, his magical senses more acute. He could detect the unique signatures of different wizards now, distinguishing between Sirius's wild, passionate magic and Lupin's more controlled, methodical energy. Most significantly, the headaches that had plagued him after using Travers' magic had diminished as the integration progressed. The foreign memories still surfaced occasionally, but they no longer felt invasive, more like references he could consult rather than intrusions he had to fight. "I think you're ready for more advanced combat scenarios," Tonks announced one morning as they finished their warm-up drills. "Moody's agreed to join us today for some 2-on-1 practice." Harry groaned. Moody was a ruthless training partner, his constant vigilance philosophy translated to surprise attacks at odd moments and no holding back during practice duels. "Try not to break anything important," Tonks added with a grin. As if summoned by his name, Moody stomped into the training hall, magical eye swiveling to fix on Harry. "Ready, Potter? Today we find out if all this fancy training actually works in a real fight." Harry barely had time to raise his wand before Moody attacked, sending a barrage of jinxes his way with surprising speed for a man of his age. Simultaneously, Tonks circled to Harry's flank, her own wand weaving complex patterns. Drawing on his new integrated abilities, Harry erected a modified shield charm, one that rippled and flexed rather than remaining static, adapting to each incoming spell. He'd discovered this technique 3 days ago, combining his own powerful Protego with Travers' more nuanced shielding approach. "Interesting defense," Moody acknowledged, increasing the intensity of his assault. "But how long can you maintain it under pressure?" Harry didn't bother responding verbally. Instead, he transitioned smoothly from defense to offense, keeping part of his shield active while simultaneously firing a series of jinxes at Tonks, forcing her to defend rather than continue her flanking maneuver. The duel escalated quickly. Moody and Tonks worked in perfect coordination, alternating attacks to keep Harry off balance. But Harry's new abilities allowed him to process multiple threats simultaneously, dividing his attention in a way that would have been impossible before. When Moody sent a particularly powerful blasting curse toward him, Harry didn't dodge or shield. He caught the spell with a modification of Priori Incantatem, absorbing its energy and redirecting it toward Tonks in a controlled burst. Tonks barely managed to deflect the redirected energy, her eyes widening in surprise. "That's new." "Improvisation," Harry explained between spells. Combining the energy reflection principles of Priori Incantatem with Travers' knowledge of curse manipulation. "Less talking, more fighting." Moody barked, though Harry detected a note of approval beneath the gruffness. The duel continued for nearly 20 minutes, far longer than Harry could have lasted against two trained Aurors before. When they finally called a halt, all three were breathing heavily, the training room showing considerable damage from deflected spells. "Well," Moody said, leaning on his staff, "I'd say you're making progress, Potter. Still plenty of room for improvement, but you might actually survive your next encounter with Death Eaters." From Moody, this was effusive praise. "Thanks," Harry replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm starting to feel like I actually know what I'm doing with these new abilities." "Don't get cocky," Moody warned. "Confidence is good, overconfidence gets you killed." "But," he added with a twisted approximation of a smile, "you've earned a bit of pride in your progress." As they were discussing potential improvements to Harry's technique, Hermione burst into the training room, her face flushed with excitement. "Harry! I think I've found something important about the blood curse." All three turned to her with immediate attention. "What is it?" Harry asked, hope rising. Had she found a way to remove the curse? Part of him was surprised to realize he wasn't sure he wanted it removed anymore. "It's about the absorption process," Hermione explained breathlessly. "I've been cross-referencing accounts of similar magical phenomena throughout history, and I noticed a pattern. In every documented case, the absorption only occurs under specific conditions. When someone tries to kill me," Harry supplied. "More specific than that," Hermione corrected. "The absorption only happens when the attacker uses the killing curse with genuine lethal intent. Other potentially lethal spells, cutting curses, blasting curses, even fiendfire, don't trigger it." Harry considered this. That fits with what happened with Travers. When we dueled normally, nothing unusual happened. It was only when he cast Avada Kedavra that I absorbed his magic. "Exactly," Hermione confirmed. "And there's more. The accounts suggest that the absorption is strongest when the attacker is magically powerful and emotionally invested in the kill, when they put their full magical signature behind the curse." "That makes sense," Tonks mused. "The killing curse requires powerful intent. You really have to mean it for it to work properly. So what's the practical application?" Moody asked bluntly. Hermione's expression grew more serious. "Two things. First, it means that if you know who wants to capture Harry without triggering another absorption, he'll have to strictly forbid the use of the killing curse, limiting his followers' options in battle." "And second?" Harry prompted. "Second," Hermione continued, "it means that theoretically, you could potentially choose when to allow an absorption to happen." A heavy silence fell over the room. "You're suggesting," Moody said slowly, "that Potter could deliberately provoke enemies into casting the killing curse, knowing it would result in him absorbing their power." "I'm not suggesting he should," Hermione clarified quickly. "Just that understanding the mechanics gives us strategic options." Harry felt conflicted. The idea of deliberately engineering situations to absorb more magical power felt dangerously close to the addictive hunger Sirius had warned him about. Yet he couldn't deny the tactical advantage it represented. "This stays between us," Moody decided firmly. "The fewer people who understand the specific trigger for the absorption, the better." If word got back to the Dark Lord. He didn't need to finish the thought. If Voldemort fully understood the mechanics of the blood curse, he could develop more effective countermeasures, or worse, find ways to exploit it for his own purposes. Their discussion was interrupted by a silvery phoenix soaring through the wall, Dumbledore's Patronus messenger. "Safe house compromised," came Dumbledore's voice from the ethereal bird. "Ministry trackers closing in. Evacuate immediately to Hogwarts. Flow connection open for 5 minutes only, starting now." The Patronus dissolved, leaving them staring at each other in alarm. "How did they find us?" Tonks demanded. Questions later, Moody growled, already moving toward the door. "We've got 5 minutes to get everyone through the flow before the Ministry locks it down." They rushed to alert the others, hastily gathering essential belongings. Within 3 minutes, everyone was assembled in the main hall where a fire blazed emerald green in the massive hearth. "Hogwarts, headmaster's office," Moody instructed, ushering Hermione through first, followed by Ron. As Harry prepared to step into the flames, a powerful blast shook the stone fortress. The wards were under attack. Ministry breach team, Tonks identified, peering through a narrow window slit. At least a dozen wizards, standard Ministry tactical formation. "They're not being subtle anymore. Get Potter through now," Moody ordered. "The rest of us will follow." Harry hesitated, reluctant to leave while his friends were still in danger. "Go, Harry," Lupin urged. "If they capture you, everything we've worked for is lost." Another blast rocked the building, stronger than the first. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling. "Their ward breakers are good," Sirius observed grimly. "Too good for standard Ministry procedure." "Someone's helping them." "Dumbledore will be waiting," Lupin reminded Harry, physically steering him toward the flames. "We'll be right behind you." With a final reluctant nod, Harry stepped into the emerald fire. Hogwarts, headmaster's office. The world spun around him in a blur of green flames and dizzying movement. Then suddenly he was stumbling out of a familiar fireplace into Dumbledore's circular office, coughing soot from his lungs. "Harry." Dumbledore stood waiting beside his desk, looking relieved. "Thank goodness. Are the others coming?" "Right behind me," Harry assured him, turning anxiously back to the fireplace. Ron and Hermione were already there, being ushered to seats by Professor McGonagall, who looked unusually tense. Seconds later, the fire flared again, and Sirius emerged, followed closely by Lupin. "Ministries brought ward breakers," Sirius reported tersely. "Professional ones, not standard Aurors. They'll be through in minutes." "Tonks and Moody?" Dumbledore asked sharply. "Covering our retreat," Lupin explained. "They're Aurors. They can claim they were tracking Harry independently and avoid charges of interfering with Ministry operations." The fire flared twice more, delivering Tonks and finally Moody, looking singed and irritable. "Close it," he barked. "They were right behind me." Dumbledore waved his wand in a complex pattern, and the flames returned to their normal orange color. A moment later, they flared green briefly before being forcefully extinguished, plunging the fireplace into darkness. "Ministry attempting to force access," Dumbledore noted calmly. "Fortunately, Hogwarts has certain, additional protections against unwanted intrusions." Harry looked around at his friends, relieved they'd all made it safely. "What happened? How did they find us?" "Magical tracking," Moody growled. "Not the standard Ministry methods, something more sophisticated." "My guess? They've developed a way to trace your unique magical signature. The absorption has made your magical profile quite distinctive, Harry," Dumbledore explained gently. "Much like a fingerprint that glows in the dark to those who know how to look for it." "So nowhere is safe?" Harry asked, dismayed. "They can track me anywhere." "Not anywhere," Dumbledore corrected. "Hogwarts' ancient protections include safeguards against magical tracking of all kinds. That's why I've arranged for you to remain here until term begins." Where exactly will I be staying? Harry asked, glancing around the office. Term doesn't start for another 2 weeks. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Ah, I believe you're already familiar with the location. Tell me, what do you know about the Room of Requirement? The Room of Requirement had transformed itself into something extraordinary, a sprawling suite that combined comfortable living quarters with an extensive training area and a library rivaling Hogwarts' own. Harry, Ron, and Hermione explored it in amazement while the adults discussed security arrangements with Dumbledore. This is brilliant, Ron declared, bouncing experimentally on one of the 4-poster beds in the sleeping area. Way better than that stone fortress in Scotland. And look at these books. Hermione was already examining the library shelves with reverent fingers. Some of these are incredibly rare texts on magical theory and blood magic. This collection would be restricted even in the Hogwarts library proper. Harry was more interested in the training area, a vast space with practice dummies, obstacle courses, and what appeared to be a dueling platform. The room had somehow intuited exactly what he needed to continue his training. The room outdid itself, he commented, testing the springiness of the dueling platform. I didn't know it could create something this elaborate. The room provides what is needed, came Dumbledore's voice as he entered with the others. And your needs at present are rather specific. Harry turned to face the headmaster. Sir, how long do you think we can stay here safely? If the Ministry's developed ways to track me, as I explained, Hogwarts protections shield against magical tracking, Dumbledore assured him. However, once term begins, your presence will inevitably become known to the student body, which presents its own complications. You mean the Ministry will pressure students to report on Harry's whereabouts, Hermione surmised. Precisely, Miss Granger. Which is why we must use these 2 weeks to advance Harry's training significantly. By the time term begins, he should be capable of defending himself against most threats and controlling his abilities well enough to prevent accidental revelations. What about Voldemort's ritual? Harry asked. Snape said he's planning something for the September full moon. Dumbledore's expression grew grave. Indeed. Professor Snape has provided valuable intelligence on the ritual preparations. Voldemort has obtained most of the necessary components, but still lacks the critical element, you, Harry. So what's our plan? Harry pressed. Just hide me away and hope he can't get to me. Not at all, Dumbledore replied. Defense alone is insufficient. We must take a more proactive approach. Harry exchanged a surprised look with Ron, who seemed equally startled that Dumbledore was suggesting an offensive strategy. Ron actually suggested something similar, Harry said. Targeting Voldemort's ritual preparations instead of just hiding. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly as he regarded Ron with new interest. Did he indeed? Strategic thinking, Mr. Weasley. 5 points to Gryffindor, I think, even before term has officially begun. Ron's ears turned pink with pleasure. The Order has identified the location where Voldemort is assembling the ritual components, Dumbledore continued. A former Death Eater estate in Norfolk, heavily warded but not under the Fidelius charm. So we raid it? Sirius asked eagerly. Destroy the ritual materials? Not we, I'm afraid, Sirius, Dumbledore corrected gently. Your face is too well known, and your capture would be disastrous. A small team of Order members will handle the operation. When? Harry asked. 4 days from now, Dumbledore replied. The night before the new moon, when magical security will be at its weakest. Professor Snape has arranged to be on guard duty that evening, which will improve our chances considerably. Harry felt a mixture of relief and frustration. He wanted to be part of the operation, to take direct action against Voldemort's plans, but understood why Dumbledore wouldn't permit it. His capture would hand Voldemort exactly what he needed for the ritual. In the meantime, Dumbledore continued, your training will intensify. Professor Moody has agreed to remain at Hogwarts as your primary combat instructor, while Professor Snape will continue occlumency lessons. Professors McGonagall and Flitwick will also contribute specialized instruction in their areas of expertise. What about me and Ron? Hermione asked. How can we help? Your research has already proven invaluable, Miss Granger, Dumbledore acknowledged. I would ask you to continue, with a specific focus on methods to permanently integrate the absorbed magic, making it impossible for Voldemort's ritual to separate it from Harry's core. And me? Ron pressed. Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully. Your strategic mind is an asset, Mr. Weasley. I would like you to work with Professor Moody on tactical scenarios, ways Harry might employ his new abilities in various combat situations. Ron looked surprised but pleased at being given such a substantive role. As the adults departed to make further arrangements, leaving the trio alone in their new quarters, Harry felt a surge of cautious optimism. For the first time since the blood curse had manifested, they were taking the initiative rather than simply reacting to threats. So, Hermione said once they were alone, shall we get started? I've already spotted several promising texts on magical integration. Always with the books, Ron teased, but without any real criticism. I should probably talk to Moody about those tactical scenarios. Harry looked between his two best friends, overwhelmed with gratitude. Despite the danger he posed, despite the target on his back, they remained steadfastly by his side, each contributing in their own way. Actually, he said, I was thinking we might take an hour to just relax. Maybe explore the room a bit more. We've been training non-stop for weeks, and, say no more, Ron interrupted with a grin. I spotted what looked like a wizard chess set in the living area. Fancy a game? And I could use a break before diving into more research, Hermione admitted. Perhaps the room has provided some light reading. Harry smiled. In the midst of all the chaos, these small moments of normalcy were precious beyond measure. Chess sounds great. And maybe the room can provide some butterbeer? As if in response, 3 bottles of butterbeer appeared on a nearby table, condensation already beating on the glass. I love magic, Ron declared, grabbing a bottle. For the next hour, they allowed themselves to simply be teenagers, playing chess, chatting about nothing important, deliberately avoiding discussion of blood curses, rituals, or ministry persecution. Harry felt the constant tension he'd been carrying begin to ease slightly, the integrated magic within him settling into a more harmonious balance. The respite couldn't last, of course. The next morning brought the beginning of their intensified training schedule, starting with a brutal combat session with Moody that left Harry magically drained and physically exhausted. You're still thinking like one person, Moody criticized as Harry picked himself up after a particularly devastating combination of spells. You've got essentially 2 magical cores now, learn to use them independently. What do you mean? Harry asked, catching his breath. Most wizards can only cast 1 spell at a time because they have a single magical pathway, Moody explained. But you've absorbed a second complete magical system. Theoretically, you should be able to cast different spells simultaneously through each pathway. Harry frowned. Is that even possible? Advanced Aurors learn a form of it, Moody confirmed. Simplified version, casting with both hands independently. But you should be capable of something more sophisticated. Try this. He demonstrated a technique where his wand cast a shield charm while his offhand simultaneously performed a wandless stunning spell. The movements were different for each hand, the concentration clearly intense. That's Newt-level aura training, Tonks commented from the sidelines, looking impressed. I only mastered it last year. Potter's not a standard case, Moody replied gruffly. His dual magical pathways should make this easier, not harder, once he learns to access them separately. Harry spent the rest of the morning attempting to master the technique, with frustratingly little progress. By lunchtime, he'd managed to cast a shield charm and a weak Expelliarmus nearly simultaneously, but the effort left him dizzy and disoriented. It's like trying to write with both hands at once while reciting different poems with each half of my brain, he complained as they ate lunch in the living area. That's exactly what it is, Hermione confirmed, looking up from her books. You're trying to create independent magical circuits. It takes most wizards years to develop that ability. I don't have years, Harry reminded her grimly. Perhaps you're approaching it wrong, Luna suggested. She had joined them for lunch, having been brought to Hogwarts by her father who was helping Dumbledore with some obscure protective enchantments. What do you mean? Harry asked, always curious about Luna's unique perspective. You're trying to divide your consciousness, but maybe you should be embracing the duality instead, she explained, waving a fork thoughtfully. Don't think of it as Harry casting 2 spells. Think of it as Harry casting 1 spell and Travers casting another, both through your body. Harry considered this. But Travers isn't here. He's just magical residue. His complete magical pathway exists within you, Luna countered. Including the neural patterns for casting. You don't need his consciousness, just his magical muscle memory. It was such a Luna explanation, seemingly nonsensical yet containing a kernel of profound insight. Harry decided to try her approach when training resumed after lunch. To his surprise, it worked. When he stopped trying to consciously control both spells and instead allowed Travers' absorbed magical pathway to function semi-autonomously, he could maintain a shield charm with his wand while simultaneously casting offensive spells with his offhand. That's it. Moody approved as Harry successfully blocked a jinx while counterattacking. You're letting the absorbed pathway function naturally instead of micromanaging it. By the end of the afternoon session, Harry had developed a rhythm, his own magic flowing through his wand in familiar patterns while Travers' magic operated through his left hand with increasing independence. The sensation was bizarre but exhilarating, like having a magical partner coordinating perfectly with his movements. This changes everything, Tonks observed as they concluded training. Dual casting gives you a significant advantage in combat situations. Most opponents won't be prepared for simultaneous offense and defense. Harry nodded, feeling both proud of his progress and uneasy about its implications. He was becoming something new, something beyond a normal wizard. Each step forward with the absorbed magic took him further from the person he'd been before. Does it bother you? He asked Tonks quietly as they packed up the training equipment. What I'm becoming? Tonks paused, considering the question seriously. It would be easy to say no, but that wouldn't be entirely honest. There's something unsettling about the absorption ability. She met his eyes directly. But what matters more is how you use it, Harry. Power itself isn't good or evil, it's the choices you make. That's what Dumbledore always says, Harry noted. Because it's true, Tonks replied with a small smile. Look, I've seen dark wizards who had perfectly ordinary magical abilities but used them cruelly. And I've seen good wizards with unusual powers who used them to protect others. You're still you, Harry, just with some extra magical tools at your disposal. Harry appreciated her honesty and perspective. As they left the training area, he felt more at peace with his evolving abilities than he had in weeks. The next few days followed a similar pattern, intensive training interspersed with research sessions and strategic planning. Harry made remarkable progress with dual casting, moving from simple spell combinations to complex battle techniques that incorporated both his original fighting style and Travers' more precise approach. Meanwhile, Hermione made a breakthrough in her research on magical integration. I think I've found it, she announced excitedly one evening as they gathered in the living area. A ritual to permanently bind absorbed magical essence to the host core, making them inseparable. That would prevent Voldemort from extracting the power, Lupin observed, examining Hermione's notes with interest. Exactly, she confirmed. The ritual isn't even dark magic, it's actually a healing technique developed for cases of magical fragmenting, where a wizard's core has been damaged and needs stabilization. What's involved? Harry asked cautiously. His experience with rituals hadn't been positive so far. It's relatively straightforward, Hermione explained. A potion containing elements that represent both magical signatures, consumed during the waxing moon while performing a specific meditative exercise. The whole process takes about 3 hours. And the risk factors? Moody demanded skeptically. Hermione hesitated. Well, there is one significant risk. If the integration is successful, there's no going back, the absorption becomes permanent, irreversible by any known means. Meaning I'd always have Travers' magic as part of me, Harry clarified. Even if we later found a way to remove the blood curse itself. Yes, Hermione confirmed. You'd be permanently changed. But it would also protect you from Voldemort's extraction ritual. Harry considered this. Weeks ago, he would have been horrified at the prospect of permanently incorporating Travers' magic. Now, after learning to work with it, to control and direct it, the idea wasn't as disturbing. I need to think about it, he said finally. When would we need to do this ritual? Ideally before the full moon when Voldemort plans his extraction attempt, Hermione replied. The next waxing moon begins tomorrow night. Convenient timing, Harry noted. Take tonight to consider it, Lupin advised. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Harry nodded, grateful for the space to process this significant choice. That night, as Ron slept soundly in the next bed, Harry lay awake, weighing his options. Permanent integration meant accepting that he would never be the same Harry Potter who had entered the Triwizard Tournament last year. He would forever carry another wizard's magical essence within him, a dark wizard, at that. Yet he'd already changed. The absorption had happened, and he'd learned to work with it rather than against it. The dual casting ability alone had transformed his fighting style, making him far more effective in combat. And if Voldemort succeeded in his extraction ritual, the consequences would be catastrophic. Not only would Harry lose the additional power he'd gained, but Voldemort would claim it for himself, becoming even more formidable. By morning, Harry had reached his decision. He would perform the integration ritual, not just to prevent Voldemort's extraction, but to fully claim and control the power he'd been given, for better or worse. He announced his decision at breakfast, to mixed reactions from his friends and mentors. Are you absolutely certain, Harry? McGonagall asked, looking concerned. This is an irreversible magical transformation. I'm sure, Harry replied firmly. I've already been transformed by the absorption. This ritual just ensures that Voldemort can't use it against me. We'll need to gather the ritual components, Hermione said, already making lists. Most are standard potion ingredients, but there are 2 personal elements required, something that represents your original magical signature and something that represents Travers. Any suggestions? Harry asked, unsure what would qualify. For your original signature, perhaps a few strands of hair from before the absorption, Lupin suggested. Hermione, did you keep any of the hair from when you made Polyjuice Potion in your second year? Hermione blushed furiously. How did you know about that? Professors talk, Lupin replied with a small smile. And that particular incident was rather memorable. I might have a sample somewhere, Hermione admitted. I kept some as a reference for future projects. And for Travers' signature? Harry asked. That's more challenging, Lupin acknowledged. Ideally, something he handled frequently that would carry his magical imprint. His wand, Harry realized. It broke during the absorption, but Tonks collected the pieces afterward as evidence. I did, Tonks confirmed. They're in an evidence pouch at Grimmauld Place. I can retrieve them today. With the decision made and preparations underway, Harry felt a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow night, he would take another step away from his old life and toward whatever he was becoming, not just a wizard with a blood curse, but something new, something unprecedented. That afternoon, as the Order prepared for their raid on Voldemort's ritual site, Harry received an unexpected visitor. Professor Snape swept into the room of requirement, his black robes billowing dramatically as always. Potter, he said without preamble, I need to speak with you privately. Harry followed Snape to a quiet corner of the library section, curious about this unusual request. The Dark Lord has altered his plans, Snape informed him in a low voice. He's aware of the Order's intended raid tomorrow night and has set a trap. Harry tensed. What kind of trap? The ritual components at the Norfolk estate are decoys, Snape explained. The real materials are being kept at Malfoy Manor, under the personal protection of the Dark Lord himself. We need to warn Dumbledore, Harry said immediately. The headmaster has been informed, Snape assured him. The raid will proceed as planned, with certain modifications to avoid casualties. But we won't get the ritual materials, Harry noted with disappointment. That is where you are mistaken, Snape countered. The raid is now a diversion. While the Order engages the Death Eaters at the Norfolk estate, drawing their attention and resources, a second, smaller team will infiltrate Malfoy Manor to locate and destroy the true ritual components. Harry immediately understood the implications. And you want me on that second team? The headmaster does not, Snape corrected sharply. He believes the risk of your capture is too great. But you disagree, Harry surmised, studying Snape's inscrutable expression. Snape's lip curled slightly. I believe that your unique abilities may be necessary to bypass certain magical protections surrounding the ritual materials. Protections specifically keyed to the Dark Lord's magical signature, which you now partially share through the blood connection and the curse. Harry was startled by this assessment. You think I can access Voldemort's protections because of our connection? It is a theory, Snape acknowledged. One the headmaster considers too dangerous to test. But you're telling me anyway, Harry noted. Why? Snape was silent for a moment, seeming to debate with himself. Finally, he said, because sometimes, Potter, the cautious approach is not the correct one. The Dark Lord would never expect you to be part of a raid on his inner sanctum, which makes it our greatest potential advantage. Harry was taken aback by Snape's unexpected support for a high-risk strategy. Are you suggesting I go against Dumbledore's orders? I am merely providing information, Snape replied coldly. What you choose to do with it is your concern. With that cryptic statement, he turned to leave, then paused. The manor's eastern wing is least guarded. The ritual chamber is beneath the drawing room, accessed via a concealed staircase behind the fireplace. The password is Serpentis Ascendant. He gave Harry a meaningful look. Should such information ever prove useful? After Snape departed, Harry remained in the library corner, contemplating this surprising development. Snape had essentially provided everything he would need to infiltrate Malfoy Manor independently, while maintaining plausible deniability about encouraging him to do so. The question was, should he? The risk was enormous. If captured, he would hand Voldemort exactly what he needed for the extraction ritual. Yet the opportunity to destroy the ritual materials directly, ensuring they couldn't be used against him, was equally compelling. Harry spent the rest of the day distracted, weighing his options while going through the motions of training. By evening, as final preparations for the integration ritual were being made, he had reached a decision, one he knew would be controversial. He waited until after dinner, when Ron and Hermione were alone with him in the living area, to share his plan. Snape told me something today, he began, keeping his voice low despite the privacy of their quarters. Something I need your help with. He explained Snape's revelations about the trap at Norfolk, the real location of the ritual materials, and the possibility that he could bypass Voldemort's protections. You can't be serious, Hermione gasped when he finished. Infiltrating Malfoy Manor? That's suicide, Harry. It's reckless even by your standards, mate, Ron agreed, looking worried. If you know who catches you there. I know the risks, Harry acknowledged. But think about it, the Order will be creating a major diversion. Most of the Death Eaters will be at the Norfolk estate, expecting an attack. Malfoy Manor will be at its most vulnerable. But Dumbledore specifically decided against you going, Hermione pointed out. Because he's being cautious, Harry countered. But Snape's right, sometimes the cautious approach isn't the right one. This is our best chance to destroy the ritual materials before Voldemort can use them. Ron and Hermione exchanged concerned looks. There's something else, Harry admitted. The integration ritual Hermione found, it will protect me from Voldemort's extraction ritual, but it won't stop him from developing something else. As long as he has those materials and scrolls, he'll keep trying to find ways to use the blood curse against me. So this isn't just about destroying the current ritual, Hermione realized. It's about eliminating his research on the subject entirely. Harry nodded. Exactly. We need to end this particular threat permanently, not just delay it. Ron looked thoughtful. Okay, let's think strategically. If, and that's a big if, we were to attempt this, how would we do it without getting caught? Harry felt a surge of gratitude that Ron had said "we" without hesitation. I have the invisibility cloak. And with the dual casting ability, I'm better equipped for combat than I've ever been. That's still not enough for an operation like this, Hermione argued. You'd need a way in and out of the manor undetected, knowledge of the layout beyond what Snape told you, and contingency plans if something goes wrong. Which is why I need your help planning it, Harry said. Both of you. Another exchange of looks between his friends, then Ron sighed. I must be mental, but, all right. Let's at least work out what it would take to do this properly. Then we can decide if it's actually possible. For the next several hours, they developed an infiltration plan, with Ron applying his strategic thinking to entry and exit routes, Hermione researching potential protective enchantments they might encounter, and Harry assessing how his new abilities could be employed. The plan that emerged was daring but not reckless. They would use the invisibility cloak to approach from the east side as Snape had suggested. Harry would employ his connection to Voldemort's magic to bypass the protective wards, a technique he'd been practicing unconsciously during occlumency sessions when he accessed the part of his mind that resonated with Voldemort's magical signature. Once inside, they would locate the ritual chamber, destroy the materials, and exit via a house elf passage Hermione had discovered in her research on the manor's construction history. It's still incredibly dangerous, Hermione cautioned when they had finalized the details. Even with the Order creating a diversion, there will be guards. And we still haven't decided who's actually going, Ron added. Because if you think you're doing this alone, Harry. I was hoping you'd both come, Harry admitted. But it has to be your choice. I won't ask you to risk yourselves for my sake. As if we'd let you go alone, Ron snorted. We'd just end up having to rescue you anyway. It's settled, then, Harry said, feeling both nervous and determined. Tomorrow night, while the Order raids the Norfolk estate, we infiltrate Malfoy Manor. After completing the integration ritual, Hermione reminded him firmly. If we're really doing this, you need that protection in place first. Harry agreed. Whatever happened at Malfoy Manor, he needed to ensure that even if he was captured, Voldemort couldn't extract the absorbed magic from his core. The die was cast. For better or worse, they were taking the fight directly to Voldemort's doorstep. No more running, no more hiding, it was time to confront the blood curse's origins and ensure it remained Harry's power, not Voldemort's weapon. Chapter 3, Power and Purpose. Hold still, Hermione instructed, carefully adding 3 drops of unicorn tears to the shimmering potion. This needs to be precise. Harry sat cross-legged in the center of a complex runic circle they'd spent hours drawing on the Room of Requirements floor. The integration ritual was in its final stages. Candles flickered at cardinal points around him, their flames unnaturally still in the windowless room. How are you feeling? Ron asked from his position outside the circle, where he monitored the magical energy patterns Hermione had taught him to recognize. Strange, Harry admitted. I can feel both magical signatures more distinctly than ever, like they're separating before merging. The ritual had begun at moonrise, with Harry drinking a preliminary potion containing strands of his pre-absorption hair and splinters from Travers's broken wand. For the past 2 hours, he'd been in a meditative state, visualizing the boundary between his gold-tinged magic and Travers's purple energy. But now, instead of maintaining that boundary, he was preparing to dissolve it permanently. The final stage is the most crucial, Hermione reminded him, consulting the ancient text she'd discovered. When you drink this potion, you need to consciously accept the foreign magic, not just tolerate it, but welcome it as part of yourself. Harry nodded, taking the crystal vial she offered. The liquid inside shimmered with an opalescent quality, neither gold nor purple but a mesmerizing blend of both. "Ready?" Hermione asked, stepping back to complete the ritual circle. Harry took a deep breath. "Ready." He drank the potion in one swallow. It tasted of thunderstorms and phoenix song, of darkness and light intermingled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into magical awareness. Harry gasped as his perception expanded dramatically. He could feel every enchantment in the room of requirement, sense the ancient magic of Hogwarts pulsing through the walls, even detect the distinctive magical signatures of Ron and Hermione standing nearby. Inside him, the previously separate magical cores began to merge, gold and purple swirling together like paint and water, creating something entirely new. Not a muddy blend but a richer, more complex pattern that retained elements of both original signatures while becoming something greater. Pain lanced through him as the merging accelerated. Harry gritted his teeth, fighting the instinct to resist. This was the critical moment Hermione had warned about. His acceptance or rejection would determine the ritual's success. Deliberately, consciously, Harry embraced the merging. He stopped thinking of the purple energy as Travers' magic and recognized it simply as another aspect of his own power, knowledge and abilities that were now legitimately his to command. The pain peaked, then vanished abruptly. In its place came a sense of wholeness Harry had never experienced before, a magical integration that felt right in a way he couldn't articulate. The candles around the circle flared brilliantly, then extinguished themselves. The ritual was complete. "Harry?" Hermione called anxiously. "Did it work? How do you feel?" Harry opened eyes he hadn't realized he'd closed. The room looked different, magical energies visible as subtle auras around objects and people. Ron glowed a warm orange-red, Hermione a vibrant blue-purple. "I can see magic," he said wonderingly. "Not just sense it, actually see it." "That's not in the text," Hermione said, sounding both concerned and academically fascinated. "What else?" Harry stood, marveling at how balanced he felt. The awkwardness of dual magical pathways had vanished, replaced by a harmonious system that seemed to function as a unified whole. "The separate pathways are gone," he explained. "It's all just, my magic now. But more complete, more accessible." He demonstrated by casting wandlessly with both hands simultaneously, producing a perfect shield charm with his right while conjuring a small flock of birds with his left. The spells formed effortlessly, requiring no more concentration than breathing. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered. "That was effortless," Harry finished. "Like I've always been able to do it." Hermione approached cautiously, her researcher's curiosity evident. The ritual succeeded beyond expectations. The integration appears complete. She cast a diagnostic charm she'd learned from Madame Pomfrey. "Your magical core reads as singular but exceptionally complex. No signs of separation or conflict." Harry nodded, unsurprised. He could feel the truth of her assessment. The formerly foreign magic was now unmistakably his own, responding to his will without resistance or delay. "How do you feel about him?" Ron asked carefully. "Any lingering influence from Travers' personality?" Harry considered the question. The memories were still there, fragments of Travers' life and experiences, but they no longer felt invasive or controlling. They were more like books he'd read or stories he'd heard, information he could access without emotional entanglement. "His memories are just information now," Harry explained. "Not emotional triggers. I can recall his knowledge without feeling his hatred or prejudices." Hermione looked relieved. That's exactly what the ritual was supposed to accomplish, preserving the magical knowledge while neutralizing the personality influence. "Does this mean you know who can't extract the power from you anymore?" Ron asked, getting to the practical point. "Theoretically," Hermione confirmed. "The magical signatures are now so thoroughly integrated that attempting to separate them would be like trying to unmix colors after they've been blended. The extraction ritual Voldemort plan shouldn't work anymore. Harry flexed his fingers, feeling the magic flowing smoothly through them. Just in time for our trip to Malfoy Manor. Hermione's expression immediately shifted to concern. About that, are you sure we should still go? The integration ritual changes things. We don't know how your magic will react in a combat situation now. All the more reason to test it, Harry countered. And the plan remains solid. The Order creates a diversion at Norfolk while we retrieve and destroy the ritual materials at Malfoy Manor. Ron checked his watch. The Order raid begins in 2 hours. If we're doing this, we need to get moving. Harry nodded, decision made. Let's gear up. They'd prepared thoroughly the previous day, gathering essential supplies and planning their approach. The invisibility cloak would cover all 3 of them if they hunched, but movement would be awkward. Instead, they'd decided Harry would wear the cloak while Ron and Hermione used disillusionment charms, less perfect but allowing greater mobility. Remember, Hermione cautioned as they prepared to leave, this is a stealth mission. We get in, destroy the ritual materials, and get out, no confrontations unless absolutely necessary. And if we're separated, Ron added, the rendezvous point is the edge of the woods beyond the manor's eastern boundary. Harry nodded, tucking his wand into his sleeve for easy access while keeping his hands free for wandless magic, a new combat style he developed that took advantage of his integrated abilities. They slipped out of the room of requirement under their various concealment methods, making their way through Hogwarts' empty corridors toward a secret passage Sirius had shown Harry on the Marauder's map, one that led to Hogsmeade and wasn't monitored by the school's security enchantments. From Hogsmeade, they would apparate to a location near Malfoy Manor that Hermione had identified through her research, close enough for approach but beyond the manor's detection wards. The castle was eerily silent as they moved through it, most of the Order members already departed for the Norfolk operation. Even the portraits seemed to be sleeping more deeply than usual, perhaps influenced by enchantments Dumbledore had placed to facilitate the night's activities. They reached the passage without incident and emerged in Hogsmeade 20 minutes later, the village dark and quiet under a moonless sky, perfect conditions for their mission. Ready? Hermione whispered, extending her arms for side-along apparition. None of them had their licenses yet, but Hermione had been practicing under Lupin's supervision and was confident in her ability. Harry and Ron each grabbed one of her arms. With a crack that seemed unnecessarily loud in the quiet village, they vanished. They reappeared on the edge of a dense woodland area, the imposing silhouette of Malfoy Manor visible on a distant hill. Even from here, Harry could sense the magical protection surrounding the estate, layer upon layer of defensive enchantments built up over generations. "Can you feel that?" he asked quietly. Ron shook his head, but Hermione nodded. Faintly. "The protective wards are exceptionally strong." "I can see them," Harry revealed, his magically enhanced vision detecting the barriers as shimmering veils of different colors. 7 distinct layers, each keyed to different magical signatures. The outermost responds to movement, the second to magical detection attempts. He continued identifying each layer, amazed at how clearly he could perceive their functions and weaknesses. "That's incredible," Hermione breathed. "This level of magical perception is almost unheard of." "Useful, though," Ron noted practically. "Can you see a way through?" Harry studied the patterns carefully. "Yes, actually. The eastern boundary, like Snape said, has a vulnerability. The wards there are anchored to a physical object, probably a boundary stone, and there's a fluctuation in the pattern. If we time it right, we can slip through during one of the pulses." Following Harry's guidance, they made their way through the woods, approaching the manor's eastern perimeter. As they got closer, Harry's senses detected something else, a magical disturbance to the north, where the Order raid on Norfolk was underway. The diversion started, he informed the others. "I can feel magical combat signatures about 20 miles from here. Strong ones." "Good," Ron said grimly. "That should draw attention away from the manor." They reached the eastern boundary, where an elegant wrought iron fence marked the physical perimeter of the estate. Beyond it, manicured gardens led up to the imposing stone mansion. Harry observed the ward patterns, tracking their rhythmic fluctuations. There, see that boundary stone with the serpent carving? That's the anchor point. The wards pulse every 73 seconds, creating a 3-second window where the detection layer is refreshing. How do you know that? Hermione asked, impressed. I just see it, Harry replied, unable to fully explain his enhanced magical perception. When I count to 3, we need to move quickly across the boundary line. Ready? Ron and Hermione nodded, tensing in preparation. 1, 2, 3. They dashed across the boundary line just as the detection ward flickered momentarily. Harry felt the magic wash over them but failed to register their presence during the refresh cycle. We're in, he whispered, scanning the gardens ahead. Stay low and move toward that hedge line, it provides cover all the way to the east wing. They crept through the immaculate gardens, pausing whenever Harry sensed movement from the house. Twice they froze as security patrols passed nearby, wizards in dark robes performing routine perimeter checks. They're understaffed, Ron observed after the second patrol passed. Must have sent most of their force to Norfolk. Still enough to cause problems, Hermione cautioned. Let's keep moving. They reached the east wing without incident, finding a service entrance used by house elves, less heavily warded than the main doors. Harry examined the magical protections, identifying a blood recognition charm that verified visitors as authorized personnel. This is where it gets tricky, he murmured. The door won't open without Malfoy blood. Can you bypass it? Ron asked. You said Snape thought your connection to you-know-who might help with his protections. Harry nodded, studying the magical pattern. The blood ward is keyed to the Black Malfoy bloodline, which connects to Voldemort through magical allegiance bonds, and I'm connected to Voldemort through the blood ritual and curse. He placed his hand on the door, concentrating on that connection, the magical link created when Voldemort used his blood in the graveyard ritual. He felt the ward resist initially, then waver as it detected the complex lineage of magical signatures flowing through him. With a soft click, the door unlocked. It worked, Harry breathed, surprised despite himself. The ward recognized me as connected enough. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a narrow service corridor. Harry immediately sensed the magical signatures of the house's occupants, perhaps a dozen people scattered throughout the building, but none in their immediate vicinity. The drawing room should be on the main floor, Hermione whispered. According to Snape, the ritual chamber is beneath it. Harry extended his magical senses, searching for the distinctive signature of ancient Egyptian magic that would mark the ritual materials. This way, he indicated, leading them down the corridor toward the heart of the house. They moved silently, Harry's enhanced perception allowing them to avoid detection charms and bypass secondary wards with carefully timed movements. The interior of Malfoy Manor was as opulent as expected, marble floors, ornate furnishings, and display cases filled with dark artifacts that made Harry's skin crawl when he sensed their magical emanations. We're getting close, he whispered as they approached a grand hallway. The drawing room is just ahead, but there are 2 magical signatures inside, stationary, probably guards. Can we go around? Ron asked. Harry shook his head. The secret passage to the ritual chamber is inside the drawing room. We need to deal with the guards. They huddled in the shadows of the hallway, discussing options. Sleeping draft? Hermione suggested, pulling a small vial from her pocket. I prepared some just in case, but we'd need to administer it somehow. Too risky, Ron countered. We need something that works at a distance. Harry considered their options, then had an inspiration. Drawing on his newly integrated magical knowledge, he performed a complex wandless enchantment, one that created a localized temporal distortion affecting perception. What was that? Ron asked, noticing the subtle shift in magical energy. Perception manipulation, Harry explained. They'll experience the next 20 minutes as if it were only 20 seconds, barely enough time to register our presence, let alone respond to it. That's incredibly advanced magic, Hermione whispered, eyes wide. Travers used it for heists, Harry replied, the knowledge coming easily now that the integration was complete. Let's move. They entered the drawing room cautiously despite the enchantment. The two guards, junior Death Eaters by their appearances, sat in chairs flanking the ornate fireplace, their movements unnaturally slow as they experienced time at a fraction of normal speed. Serpentis Ascendant, Harry whispered, pointing his wand at the fireplace as Snape had instructed. The back of the fireplace shimmered and dissolved, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. Harry led the way down, illuminating the steps with a wandless lumos that he kept dimmed to avoid detection. The staircase spiraled downward into a large chamber carved from the bedrock beneath the manor. The room was circular, with ancient runes etched into the stone floor forming an elaborate ritual circle. At its center stood an obsidian altar, and upon it lay a collection of artifacts that radiated powerful, malevolent magic. That's it, Harry breathed, approaching carefully. The ritual components. The altar held an array of objects, papyrus scrolls covered in hieroglyphics, jars containing viscous substances Harry didn't want to identify, ceremonial daggers, and at the center, a large crystal phial filled with swirling silver-red liquid. My blood, Harry realized, recognizing the magical signature. Mixed with something else, probably Voldemort's. We need to destroy it all, Ron said, raising his wand. Wait, Hermione cautioned, examining the ritual circle. The runes are active, part of a larger containment system. If we just blast everything, it could trigger magical backlash. Harry studied the magical patterns flowing through the room. She's right. The ritual circle is designed to channel magical energy in specific patterns. Disrupting it chaotically could be catastrophic. So what do we do? Ron asked impatiently. We don't have time for a careful dismantling. Harry considered the problem, drawing on his integrated magical knowledge. We need to disrupt the underlying magical foundation first, then destroy the physical components. Hermione, can you identify the keystone rune in the sequence? Hermione circled the room, examining the intricate patterns. There, she finally pointed. That Ankh symbol combined with the serpent glyph, it's binding the entire sequence together. Perfect, Harry said, approaching the indicated rune. Stand back. Drawing on both his original magical strength and Travers' technical precision, Harry cast a specialized countercharm, one designed to unravel runic enchantments by reversing their energy flow. The stone floor trembled as the magic took effect, the glowing runes flickering as their power diminished. Now! Harry called. Destroy the components. Ron and Hermione targeted the altar with precisely aimed blasting curses, shattering the artifacts while Harry maintained the countercharm that prevented magical backlash. The crystal phial containing the blood mixture exploded last, releasing a cloud of silvery vapor that dissipated harmlessly thanks to Harry's containment. That's done it, Hermione confirmed, scanning the room for any remaining active magic. The ritual components are destroyed. Let's get out of here, Ron urged. Before someone notices, a slow clapping sound echoed from the staircase, interrupting him. They spun around to find Lucius Malfoy standing at the bottom of the steps, flanked by 4 masked Death Eaters. Impressive work, Malfoy drawled, his wand held casually at his side. Particularly your method of dismantling the runic protections, Potter. The Dark Lord will be most interested to learn of your expanded capabilities. Harry instinctively stepped in front of his friends, his integrated magic surging in response to the threat. You're supposed to be at Norfolk with the others. Malfoy's lips curled into a cold smile. Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate a secondary strike? The Dark Lord is always several moves ahead. While your precious order creates a diversion that engages nothing but our newest recruits, our inner circle remained precisely where we needed to be. Harry's mind raced. They'd walked into a trap, again. Voldemort had anticipated Dumbledore's plan and prepared accordingly. Your perception charm on my guards was particularly noteworthy, Malfoy continued conversationally. Advanced magic, even for a wizard of Travers' experience. You've integrated his abilities quite thoroughly, haven't you? Harry didn't respond, subtly shifting his stance to a defensive position Tonks had taught him. His enhanced magical senses evaluated the opponents. Malfoy himself was formidable, but two of the masked Death Eaters radiated significantly more powerful magical signatures. The Dark Lord will be here shortly, Malfoy informed them with evident satisfaction. He's most eager to examine your condition personally, Potter. Your friends, however, are superfluous to his requirements. The threat to Ron and Hermione triggered something deep in Harry's integrated magic, a protective instinct amplified by his enhanced power. Without conscious decision, he erected a dome shield around the three of them, far stronger than any he'd previously managed. Stupefy. Ron and Hermione cast simultaneously, their spells sizzling through Harry's one-way shield toward the Death Eaters. Malfoy deflected Ron's spell with a lazy flick of his wand, while one of the masked figures batted away Hermione's with equal ease. How disappointing, Malfoy sighed. I had hoped for more of a challenge after your impressive runic work. Subdue them, he ordered the masked figures. The Dark Lord wants Potter alive and relatively undamaged. The others are expendable. The Death Eaters advanced, casting a barrage of spells that hammered against Harry's shield. Despite his enhanced power, maintaining protection against four skilled opponents simultaneously was draining him rapidly. We need to get to the stairs, he muttered to Ron and Hermione. On my signal, run for the exit. I'll cover you. We're not leaving you, Hermione insisted. Not asking you to, Harry clarified. We move together, but I need you to focus on running while I handle defense. The Death Eaters continued their assault, their spells growing more vicious, no longer attempting to stun but to maim and incapacitate. Harry's shield began to flicker under the onslaught. Drawing on his integrated magic's full potential, Harry prepared a complex countermove, one that would momentarily blind and disorient their attackers while propelling his shield and its occupants toward the staircase. Ready, he whispered to his friends. 3, 2, 1. Now. Harry released the built-up magical energy in a controlled explosion of light and force. The Death Eaters staggered backward, momentarily blinded, while Harry, Ron, and Hermione were propelled toward the stairs within their protective bubble. They landed at the base of the staircase, the shield dissipating as Harry redirected his magic to offensive purposes. With precise wandless casting, he sealed the four masked Death Eaters in magical restraints before they could recover their equilibrium. Malfoy, however, had shielded his eyes at the critical moment and remained free. His face contorted with fury as he saw his companions immobilized. You'll pay for that, Potter, he snarled, abandoning his aristocratic composure as he cast a vicious cutting curse. Harry deflected it with a precisely aimed counterspell, then immediately followed with a stunning hex that Malfoy barely blocked. Go! Harry shouted to Ron and Hermione. Get up the stairs. They hesitated only briefly before following his instruction, understanding that their best chance was to reach the exit. Harry engaged Malfoy directly, his integrated magic flowing smoothly as he alternated between defense and offense. To his surprise, he found himself not just matching Malfoy but overwhelming him. The older wizard's spells were technically perfect but predictable. Harry's enhanced magical perception allowed him to anticipate Malfoy's moves and counter them with increasing ease. Sensing defeat approaching, Malfoy grew desperate. Avada Kedavra, he bellowed, green light erupting from his wand. Harry didn't dodge. After the integration ritual, he understood the blood curse's mechanics intimately, knew exactly what would happen if Malfoy's killing curse struck him. The green light hit Harry squarely in the chest. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop as the curse connected with his magical core. Then, as with Travers, the energy reversed direction, flowing back through the magical connection between caster and target. Malfoy's eyes widened in horror as he felt his magic being pulled from him. Unlike Travers, who had been completely consumed, Malfoy managed to sever the connection before complete absorption, but at terrible cost. He collapsed to the floor, his magical core damaged and depleted, no longer a threat. Harry staggered, absorbing the fragment of Malfoy's magic that had transferred before the connection broke. Unlike the Travers absorption, this integration happened almost seamlessly, his unified magical core assimilating the new power without conflict or disorientation. "Harry!" Ron called from the top of the stairs. "Come on!" Shaking off the momentary disorientation, Harry raced up the stairs to rejoin his friends in the drawing room. The perception-charmed guards were still moving in slow motion, unaware of what had transpired beneath them. "What happened down there?" Hermione demanded as they hurried from the drawing room. "We saw the green light, Malfoy tried the killing curse," Harry explained tersely. "The blood curse activated, but only partially. I got some of his magic, not all of it." "You absorbed Malfoy?" Ron asked, sounding both horrified and impressed. "Just a fragment," Harry clarified. "He broke the connection before full absorption. But we need to move, those restraints won't hold the others for long." They raced through the manor's corridors, Harry's enhanced senses guiding them away from other occupants. They were nearly to the east wing when Harry suddenly froze, a cold sensation washing over him. "He's here," he whispered, his scar beginning to burn. "Voldemort just arrived." The magical pressure in the manor shifted dramatically as a supremely powerful presence entered the building. Harry could feel Voldemort's rage as he discovered the destroyed ritual components, fury so intense it bled through their connection despite Harry's occlumency shields. Change of plans, Harry decided quickly. The eastern exit will be watched now. We need another way out. The house elf passages, Hermione suggested. They should connect to the kitchens, which will have an exit to the gardens. Harry extended his magical senses, searching for the distinctive magical signatures of house elf transportation pathways. "This way," he indicated, leading them down a narrow side passage. They moved swiftly but cautiously, aware that the manor was now on full alert. Twice they had to duck into alcoves as Death Eaters hurried past, responding to Voldemort's summons. The kitchen was mercifully empty when they reached it, the house elves presumably hiding from the commotion above. A small door in the back wall led to the kitchen gardens, and beyond that, the boundary of the estate. Almost there, Ron breathed as they slipped outside into the cool night air. They had barely taken 3 steps when the ground before them erupted in a line of fire, blocking their path. Behind them, the kitchen door blasted off its hinges as a wave of magical force struck it. "Going somewhere, Harry," came a high, cold voice that sent chills down Harry's spine. They turned to find Voldemort himself standing in the doorway, his serpentine features illuminated by the flames he had conjured. His red eyes fixed on Harry with hungry intensity. "How fascinating you've become," Voldemort observed, his head tilting slightly as he studied Harry. "I can sense the integration you've performed, crude but effective. Travers' magic flows through you now as if it were your own. And is that a touch of Lucius the First detect as well? You've been busy tonight." Harry pushed Ron and Hermione behind him, facing Voldemort directly. "Your ritual is destroyed. You can't extract the absorbed magic anymore." A temporary setback, Voldemort dismissed with a casual wave. "The ritual was merely one approach among many. Now that you're here, I can study the source directly." He stepped forward, and Harry felt the immense pressure of Voldemort's magic pressing against him, not attacking yet, but testing, probing his defenses. "Run," Harry whispered to his friends. "When I engage him, get past the fire and head for the boundary." "We're not leaving you," Hermione hissed back. "You have to," Harry insisted. "I can hold him longer if I'm not worried about protecting you." "Please." Ron gripped Harry's shoulder briefly. "We'll bring help." Before Hermione could protest further, Voldemort spoke again. "I find myself curious, Harry. What does it feel like to absorb another wizard's essence? To consume their magic and make it your own?" His lipless mouth curved in a terrible smile. "We are not so different in our appetites, it seems. I'm nothing like you, Harry replied, carefully gathering his magic for the confrontation he knew was coming. I don't seek to absorb others. It only happens when someone tries to kill me. A defensive mechanism, yes, Voldemort acknowledged. But tell me truthfully, did you not feel a thrill when you took Lucius' power? Did you not crave more? Harry couldn't deny it entirely. There had been a moment of exhilaration when Malfoy's magic flowed into him, a rush of power that felt intoxicating. But unlike Voldemort, he hadn't sought it out. The difference between us, Harry said firmly, is that I don't let that craving control me. Voldemort laughed, a chilling sound devoid of genuine mirth. Not yet, perhaps. But power changes us all, Harry. Given time, you will seek out greater absorptions, greater power. It is inevitable. Enough talk, Harry declared, raising his wand. You won't capture me tonight. Brave words, Voldemort observed. Let us see if your newfound abilities match your confidence. Without further warning, he struck, not with a direct assault but with a complex web of spells that surrounded Harry, Ron, and Hermione from multiple directions simultaneously. Harry recognized the strategy instantly. Voldemort was attempting to separate them, to isolate Harry from his friends. Drawing on his integrated magic, Harry countered with a spherical shield that expanded outward, disrupting Voldemort's web before it could solidify. At the same time, he sent a powerful blast of magical energy at the line of fire blocking their escape, temporarily creating a gap. Now, he shouted to Ron and Hermione. Go! They hesitated only a fraction of a second before racing toward the opening, ducking under residual flames. Voldemort snarled in anger, sending a barrage of curses after them, but Harry intercepted each one with precisely aimed counterspells. How touching, Voldemort mocked as Ron and Hermione disappeared into the darkness beyond. Sacrificing yourself for your friends, again. Your mother would be proud. They'll bring help, Harry replied, maintaining his defensive stance. You can't keep me here long enough to do whatever you're planning. I don't need to keep you, Voldemort countered, his red eyes gleaming. I merely need to understand. Legilimens. The mental attack came with overwhelming force, far stronger than Snape's probing during their occlumency lessons. Harry's mental defenses, though improved by the integration ritual, buckled under the assault. But instead of fighting directly, Harry employed a strategy inspired by his integrated magical knowledge, redirecting rather than blocking. He allowed Voldemort into a carefully constructed portion of his mind while protecting his core self behind multiple layers of misdirection. Voldemort moved through Harry's outer mental defenses, searching for the mechanics of the absorption process. What he found instead was a fragmented labyrinth of memories and magical theory, real information mixed with fabrications and dead ends. Clever, Voldemort acknowledged, withdrawing from Harry's mind after encountering too many false paths. Your occlumency has improved considerably. Harry used the brief respite to strengthen his defenses, knowing Voldemort was merely changing tactics rather than abandoning the attack. I wonder, Voldemort mused, circling Harry slowly, what would happen if I were to kill you now? Would your blood curse attempt to absorb my magic as well? An interesting experiment, though not one I'm eager to conduct personally. You're afraid, Harry realized suddenly. Afraid that if you tried to kill me directly, you might be the one absorbed. Voldemort's eyes narrowed dangerously. Caution is not fear, Harry. I merely recognize an unpredictable variable when I see one. He struck again without warning, this time with a physical assault, transfiguring the flagstones beneath Harry's feet into quicksand while simultaneously conjuring metallic chains that whipped toward him from multiple directions. Harry responded with a combination of spells that showcased his integrated abilities, a partial hover charm that kept him just above the quicksand, coupled with a modified freezing charm that rendered the chains brittle enough to shatter when they collided with his shield. Voldemort's expression shifted from confidence to growing frustration as Harry continued to counter his increasingly complex attacks. The duel intensified, magical energy crackling through the air as spell met counterspell. Drawing on Travers' extensive knowledge of curse-breaking, Harry began identifying patterns in Voldemort's casting, weaknesses in otherwise flawless technique. Though still outmatched in raw power, Harry's integrated magical knowledge allowed him to fight with unprecedented effectiveness, conserving energy while forcing Voldemort to expend more with each exchange. "Your absorption of Travers has served you well," Voldemort observed during a momentary lull. "I begin to see the true potential of this blood curse. With multiple absorptions, you could become formidable." "Is that a compliment?" Harry asked, using the conversation to catch his breath and reassess his options. He could sense activity at the manor's boundaries, the order arriving in response to Ron and Hermione's alert. He just needed to hold out a little longer. "An observation," Voldemort replied. "And perhaps an offer." "An offer?" Harry repeated skeptically. "Join me," Voldemort proposed, his voice suddenly smooth, persuasive. "I can teach you to control and direct the blood curse, to choose your absorptions rather than waiting for chance encounters. Together, we could identify the most powerful wizards to add to your collection, building an unparalleled repository of magical knowledge and ability." The offer was so unexpected that Harry momentarily faltered. "You want me as an ally? After trying to kill me for years?" "Circumstances change," Voldemort replied pragmatically. "Your condition presents unique opportunities that outweigh our past conflicts. Think of it, Harry, carefully selected absorptions under controlled conditions. Imagine the power you could accumulate." For a fleeting moment, the image was seductively compelling, deliberately seeking out wizards with specialized magical abilities, absorbing their power one by one, becoming something beyond what any single wizard could achieve. Then Harry recognized the trap. "You'd want me to absorb your enemies for you. Turn me into a weapon against those who oppose you." "Initially, perhaps," Voldemort acknowledged without shame. "But the benefits would be mutual. You would gain power with each absorption, and I would eliminate obstacles to our shared goals." "We don't have shared goals," Harry stated firmly. "And I won't become a magical vampire, killing wizards to steal their power." Voldemort's false cordiality vanished instantly. "Then you will remain what you are now, a boy with power he neither understands nor deserves, stumbling through abilities that should belong to greater wizards." He raised his wand, his patience clearly exhausted. "If you will not be an ally, you will be a specimen. I may not kill you directly, but there are many ways to render you helpless for study." The magical pressure around Harry intensified as Voldemort prepared a massive assault. Harry could feel the Dark Lord gathering power for an overwhelming attack that would be difficult to counter even with his enhanced abilities. In that critical moment, Harry made a decision. Instead of preparing a defensive response, he deliberately lowered a specific section of his magical defenses, the boundary connected to Voldemort through their blood link. As Voldemort launched his attack, Harry used the blood connection as a conduit, not to absorb Voldemort's magic but to momentarily merge their magical perceptions, allowing Voldemort to experience the integrated consciousness Harry had developed through the ritual. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Voldemort staggered, his attack faltering as his mind was suddenly flooded with the sensation of magical integration, the harmonious blending of distinct magical signatures into a unified whole. For a wizard who had repeatedly fragmented his soul and viewed power only as something to be dominated and controlled, the experience of true magical integration was profoundly disorienting. What is this?" Voldemort gasped, fighting to sever the connection. "Integration," Harry answered, maintaining the link for precious seconds longer. "Not domination or control, unity of purpose. Something you can't understand because you've spent your life dividing yourself instead of becoming whole." With a howl of rage, Voldemort finally broke the connection, his red eyes blazing with fury and something that might have been fear. "You dare," he began, but was interrupted by multiple cracks of apparition from the gardens beyond. The order had arrived. Through the gap in the flames, Harry could see Dumbledore leading a group of wizards across the grounds, their wands raised and ready. Voldemort assessed the situation with cold calculation. "This encounter is merely delayed, Harry Potter. We will meet again, when there are fewer interruptions." With a swirl of black smoke, he vanished, not retreating in defeat but strategically withdrawing to fight another day. Harry sagged with exhaustion as Dumbledore and the others raced toward him, the magical exertion of the duel finally catching up to him. But beneath the fatigue was a profound realization: he had faced Voldemort directly and held his own, not just survived, but genuinely challenged the most powerful dark wizard of the age. "Harry!" Dumbledore called as he approached, concern evident in his voice. "Are you injured?" "I'm all right," Harry assured him, though his legs trembled with magical depletion. "Just tired." "Voldemort has fled," Dumbledore confirmed, his sharp eyes taking in the battlefield and assessing what had occurred. "Miss Granger and Mr. Weasley explained your mission. Rather reckless, I must say, though impressively executed." "We destroyed the ritual components," Harry reported, accepting Lupin's supportive arm as his strength wavered. "Voldemort can't extract the absorbed magic anymore." "So I understand," Dumbledore replied, his expression a mixture of disapproval and reluctant admiration. "We will discuss your unauthorized excursion later. For now, let us remove you from Malfoy Manor before the Ministry arrives." As they retreated across the grounds, Harry glanced back at the imposing mansion where he had just faced Voldemort in direct magical combat for the first time since the blood curse manifested. Something fundamental had changed tonight, not just in his magical abilities, but in Voldemort's perception of him. No longer merely the boy who lived, Harry had become something Voldemort hadn't anticipated, a genuine magical rival with abilities that could potentially match his own. The implications were as terrifying as they were empowering. The aftermath of the Malfoy Manor infiltration unfolded over the following days with surprising rapidity. The Ministry, responding to reports of magical disturbances, had raided the estate, discovering not only the destroyed ritual chamber but also numerous illegal dark artifacts hidden throughout the mansion. Lucius Malfoy, found severely magically depleted and incoherent, had been taken to St. Mungo's under guard. The official Daily Prophet report claimed he had suffered a magical accident during unauthorized experimentation, making no mention of Harry's role in his condition. The Order's simultaneous raid on the Norfolk estate had resulted in the capture of several low-ranking Death Eaters but no significant leaders, confirming that Voldemort had indeed anticipated their strategy and prepared accordingly. At Hogwarts, Harry, Ron, and Hermione faced the consequences of their unauthorized mission. Dumbledore had been surprisingly measured in his response, acknowledging their success while emphasizing the dangers of acting without proper support. "I understand why you felt compelled to take direct action," the headmaster told them during a private meeting in his office. "But you must recognize that Voldemort is not your responsibility alone, Harry. The Order exists precisely to share such burdens." "I know, sir," Harry acknowledged. "But after everything that's happened with the blood curse, it felt like something I needed to handle myself." Dumbledore studied him thoughtfully over his half-moon spectacles. "And how do you feel now, after the integration ritual and your confrontation with Voldemort?" Harry considered the question carefully. The past few days had given him time to process the changes in his magic and his sense of self. The integration was complete and stable, Travers' magical knowledge and the fragment of Malfoy's power fully incorporated into his unified core. "I feel whole," he finally answered. "For the first time since the absorption happened, I don't feel like I'm fighting against foreign magic inside me. It's all just mine now." "A significant development," Dumbledore observed. "And your ability to hold your own against Voldemort, even briefly, suggests the integrated magic has substantially increased your capabilities." Harry nodded. "It's not just having more power, it's having different kinds of magical knowledge. Travers knew spells and techniques I'd never encountered, approaches to magic I wouldn't have considered. The integration gives me options I didn't have before." "A valuable perspective," Dumbledore agreed. "Though it raises important questions about the path forward." "You mean whether I should seek out more absorptions," Harry stated directly, having anticipated this concern. Dumbledore inclined his head. "Voldemort offered you that path, did he not? The deliberate collection of magical abilities through the blood curse." "He did," Harry confirmed. "And I rejected it. Yet the temptation remains, Dumbledore noted, not accusingly but with gentle understanding. The blood curse creates a natural hunger for more power, a hunger that will likely intensify with each absorption. Harry couldn't deny this truth. He had felt that hunger when he partially absorbed Malfoy's magic, the intoxicating rush of new power integrating with his core. It would be dishonest to claim he was immune to its appeal. "I don't want to become a predator," Harry said firmly. "I won't seek out wizards to absorb. But I also can't pretend the ability doesn't exist. If someone tries to kill me with the killing curse, the absorption will happen regardless of my intentions." A reasonable position, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though managing that balance may prove challenging as word of your ability spreads. This was another concern that had been weighing on Harry. The Daily Prophet had published increasingly detailed accounts of his vampiric magical absorption, speculating wildly about the extent of his abilities. Some articles painted him as a dangerous magical anomaly that needed containment, while others suggested he might be developing powers to rival Voldemort himself. "The Ministry's still pushing for me to turn myself in for examination, aren't they?" Harry asked. "Minister Fudge remains insistent," Dumbledore confirmed. "Though his position has weakened considerably since the discovery of Death Eater activity at Malfoy Manor. It has become difficult for him to deny Voldemort's return while simultaneously explaining why prominent citizens are hosting ritual chambers in their basements." This political shift had been one unexpected benefit of their Malfoy Manor mission. The evidence discovered had forced the Ministry to acknowledge Voldemort's return, undermining Fudge's year-long campaign to discredit Harry and Dumbledore. "What happens when term starts?" Harry asked, moving to practical concerns. "The prophets made sure everyone knows about the blood curse. Not exactly going to be a normal year at Hogwarts." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled slightly. "When have you ever experienced a normal year at Hogwarts, Harry?" "Despite everything," Harry laughed. "Fair point." "Nevertheless," Dumbledore continued more seriously, "appropriate accommodations will be made. You will return to Gryffindor Tower with enhanced security measures, and Professor McGonagall has arranged a modified schedule to allow for continued specialized training. Your fellow students will adjust, as they have to previous, peculiarities surrounding your Hogwarts experience." Harry wasn't entirely convinced that his classmates would casually accept his new status as a wizard who could potentially absorb their magic, but he appreciated Dumbledore's confidence. "And Voldemort?" he asked, addressing the most significant concern. "He won't give up trying to understand and exploit the blood curse." "No, he will not," Dumbledore agreed gravely. "But his approach will necessarily change. Having failed to extract the power through ritual means, he will likely focus on studying you directly, understanding how the absorption works and whether it can be replicated or reversed through other methods. He offered to teach me to control it," Harry revealed. "To help me choose absorptions deliberately." Dumbledore's expression sharpened with interest. "Did he indeed? A significant departure from his previous desire to kill you outright." "He sees the potential value now," Harry explained. "Using me as a weapon against his enemies, having me absorb wizards whose power he wants eliminated." A predictable adaptation, Dumbledore mused. Voldemort has always been quick to incorporate unexpected developments into his plans. If he cannot have the power directly, he will attempt to control it indirectly through you. The strategy made perfect sense from Voldemort's perspective. Why waste the potential of Harry's ability when it could be harnessed as a weapon? "I showed him something," at the end, Harry said, recalling the final moments of their confrontation. "Through our blood connection, I let him experience what integration feels like, the harmony of unified magic instead of dominated power." Dumbledore leaned forward, suddenly intensely interested. "And his reaction?" "He couldn't handle it," Harry replied. "It was like showing color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. The concept was completely foreign to him." "Fascinating," Dumbledore breathed. "You may have inadvertently discovered a significant weakness, Harry. Voldemort has spent decades fragmenting his soul, dividing his magical essence in pursuit of immortality. the experience of true magical integration would be not merely unfamiliar but fundamentally opposed to his entire magical philosophy. Harry hadn't considered this broader implication. You think it could be used against him somehow? Perhaps, Dumbledore replied thoughtfully. It merits further exploration, certainly. For now, however, I believe we have discussed enough serious matters for one evening. You have experienced remarkable changes in recent weeks and deserve some time to simply be a 15-year-old wizard preparing for his 5th year at Hogwarts. Taking this as dismissal, Harry rose to leave. At the door, he paused, turning back to the headmaster. Sir. Do you think my mother knew what would happen with the blood protection? That it might eventually turn into this curse? Dumbledore's expression softened. Lily Potter was an exceptionally gifted witch, particularly in the area of protective charms. But I do not believe she could have foreseen this specific outcome. She sought only to protect you, Harry, with the most powerful magic known, a mother's love and willingness to sacrifice everything for her child. But that protection got twisted when Voldemort used my blood, Harry noted. Twisted, yes, but not destroyed, Dumbledore corrected gently. The fundamental nature of your mother's protection remains, to defend you against those who would cause you harm. The mechanism has changed, becoming more aggressive in response to Voldemort's violation of the original charm, but its purpose remains aligned with Lily's intent. This perspective brought Harry unexpected comfort. The blood curse wasn't some dark aberration but an evolution of his mother's protection, adapting to new threats in order to keep him safe. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. Dumbledore nodded, his eyes kind. Your mother would be proud of how you're handling these challenges, Harry. Not because of the power you've gained, but because of the wisdom and restraint you've shown in using it. With those words lingering in his mind, Harry left the office to rejoin Ron and Hermione, who were waiting anxiously in the corridor outside. How'd it go? Ron asked immediately. Are we expelled? Imprisoned? Fed to hippogriffs? None of the above, Harry assured him with a smile. Just a surprisingly reasonable discussion about moving forward. That's a relief, Hermione sighed. Though I still feel terrible about going behind the Order's back, even if we did succeed. Dumbledore seemed more impressed than angry, Harry told them as they walked toward the room of requirement, which remained their accommodation until term began the following week. I think destroying the ritual components outweighed the recklessness of the mission itself. And how are you feeling? Hermione asked carefully. After everything at the manor, and the partial absorption of Malfoy. Harry considered his answer thoughtfully. Different, but in a good way. The integration ritual worked perfectly, everything feels balanced now. And the fragment of Malfoy's magic merged seamlessly with the rest. Any urges to absorb more wizards? Ron asked bluntly, then flinched when Hermione elbowed him. What? We're all thinking it. Harry appreciated Ron's directness. The hunger is there, he admitted honestly. I can feel it, a sort of awareness of what another absorption would offer. But it's manageable. More like recognizing the appeal of something dangerous than being consumed by craving. That's reassuring, Hermione said, though she still looked concerned. And your duel with Voldemort? We only saw the very end when we returned with the Order. I held my own, Harry replied, still somewhat amazed by this fact. Not as equals, he's still more powerful and experienced, but I wasn't helpless. The integrated magic gave me options I wouldn't have had otherwise. They reached the room of requirement, finding it transformed into a comfortable common room setting identical to Gryffindor Tower, the room's way of helping them transition back to normal student life. As they settled into familiar armchairs by the fire, Harry felt a profound sense of gratitude for his friend's unwavering support throughout the blood curse ordeal. Where others had seen a dangerous magical anomaly, Ron and Hermione had seen simply Harry, changed but still fundamentally the same person they had befriended years ago. So what happens now? Ron asked, putting into words the question they were all considering. You've got this integrated magic, you know who knows about it, the whole wizarding world's talking about Harry Potter the magical vampire. How does life go back to normal? It doesn't, Harry replied honestly. Normal isn't an option anymore. But that doesn't mean we can't move forward. The Prophet's latest article suggested you might be the only wizard capable of matching Voldemort magically, Hermione noted, her tone carefully neutral. They're starting to frame the blood curse as a potential advantage rather than a dangerous condition. Public opinion is fickle, Harry said with a shrug. Last year I was an attention-seeking liar, now I'm a powerful magical anomaly who might save them all. Next week I'll probably be something else entirely. Still, Ron persisted, you've got to admit your magical abilities have changed dramatically. That duel with Malfoy, you took him down in seconds. And you actually faced you-know-who and didn't get killed or captured. That's, well, it's unprecedented, mate. Harry couldn't deny this assessment. His magical capabilities had expanded far beyond what he could have imagined at the end of his 4th year. The integration of Travers' knowledge and the fragment of Malfoy's power had transformed his magical approach, making him more precise, more creative, more efficient in his spellwork. I'm still just Harry, he insisted, even as he recognized the partial untruth in the statement. Just with additional resources. Hermione gave him a knowing look. You don't have to downplay it for our benefit, Harry. We've been with you through this whole process. We've seen the changes. And we're still here, Ron added firmly. No matter how much magical vampire nonsense happens. Harry smiled gratefully. I know. And that means more than any magical power could. The conversation shifted to more ordinary topics, speculation about their OWL year, Quidditch prospects, and whether their new defense against the dark arts teacher would be competent or disastrous. But Harry's mind kept returning to the fundamental question underlying everything. What was he becoming, and where would it end? The blood curse had transformed him in ways that went beyond simple magical enhancement. His perception of magic itself had changed, he could see and feel magical energies in ways most wizards never experienced. His integrated consciousness processed information differently, approaching problems from multiple magical traditions simultaneously. And beneath it all, the awareness that if someone else tried to kill him with the killing curse, he would absorb more power, more knowledge, becoming even further removed from the ordinary wizard he had once been. Would there be a point where he absorbed so much that he lost himself entirely? Or was the integration ritual the answer, allowing him to incorporate new absorptions while maintaining his core identity? These questions had no immediate answers, but Harry was determined to approach them thoughtfully rather than fearfully. The blood curse was now an inextricable part of who he was, not a condition to be cured but an ability to be understood and responsibly managed. The Hogwarts Express hummed with tension as it carried students back to school for the autumn term. Word of Harry's condition had spread far beyond the Prophet's reports, with rumors and speculation multiplying with each retelling. By the time Harry boarded the train, flanked by Ron, Hermione, and several Order members serving as unofficial security, the wildest versions suggested he could absorb magic simply by looking at other wizards. They're saying you drained 3 Aurors who tried to arrest you, Neville reported nervously when he joined them in their compartment. And that you can tell how powerful a wizard is just by being near them. That second part's actually true, Ron said before Harry could respond. He can sense magical signatures now. Pretty useful, actually. Neville's eyes widened. Really? Can you sense mine? Harry hesitated, then nodded. Everyone has a distinctive magical pattern. Yours is steady. Solid. Deeper than most people realize. This wasn't flattery. Harry genuinely perceived Neville's magic as having unexpected depth and resilience beneath its outwardly unremarkable presentation. The assessment seemed to please Neville enormously. What about the absorption thing? He asked, curiosity overcoming caution. Is it true you can just take someone's magic? No, Harry stated firmly, addressing the most dangerous rumor directly. I can't just absorb magic at will. It only happens under very specific circumstances, when someone tries to kill me with the killing curse specifically. "So we're safe as long as we don't try to murder you," came Luna's dreamy voice as she entered the compartment, smiling serenely. "That seems a reasonable arrangement." Despite everything, Harry laughed. "Exactly. Just maintain your general non-homicidal attitudes toward me, and everything will be fine." This blunt approach proved surprisingly effective as the journey continued. Word spread through the train that Harry couldn't vampirically drain anyone unless they attempted to kill him with an unforgivable curse, which significantly reduced the number of students avoiding his compartment out of fear. By the time they reached Hogsmeade Station, Harry had entertained a steady stream of cautiously curious visitors, most wanting to verify rumors and assess for themselves whether he had visibly changed. "You don't look like a magical vampire," a third-year Ravenclaw observed disappointedly. "What does a magical vampire look like?" Harry asked, amused. "Dunno. Paler, maybe? With glowing eyes or something cool?" The transition from feared anomaly to interesting curiosity happened faster than Harry had anticipated. By the welcome feast, the student body had largely separated into three camps: those still genuinely afraid of Harry's abilities, those fascinated by the magical implications, and those who simply accepted it as the latest peculiarity in Harry Potter's unusual life. The staff table reflected similar divisions. Professor McGonagall watched Harry with her usual mixture of concern and pride. Snape observed him with calculating assessment, likely evaluating how the integrated magic had settled after their occlumency sessions. And the new defense against the dark arts teacher, a ministry appointee named Umbridge, despite Fudge's weakened position, regarded him with poorly disguised hostility. "That Umbridge woman is going to be trouble," Hermione predicted as they settled into Gryffindor Tower after the feast. "Did you hear her speech? All that nonsense about pruning practices that ought to be prohibited, while staring directly at you." "The ministry's still pushing for restrictions on Harry," Ron agreed. "They're just being more subtle about it now that they can't deny you-know-who's back." Harry had indeed noticed Umbridge's pointed comments and hostile glares. The ministry clearly intended to maintain some form of surveillance and control over him, even if they couldn't remove him from Hogwarts outright. "Let them try," he said with more confidence than he'd have felt before the integration. "Dumbledore's already arranged special protections and modified schedules. She can't interfere too directly without challenging him." His first defense against the dark arts class proved this assessment optimistic. Umbridge announced a theoretical-only curriculum specifically designed to minimize dangerous practical applications that might trigger unforeseen magical interactions, a transparent attempt to prevent Harry from practicing or demonstrating his enhanced abilities. "She's trying to hobble you," Hermione whispered furiously as they read the meaningless text Umbridge had assigned. "Keeping you from developing combat skills with your integrated magic." Harry shared her frustration but remained outwardly calm. Dumbledore anticipated this. "That's why I have evening sessions with Tonks and Moody 3 times a week, to continue practical training away from ministry interference." This specialized training began that very evening. The room of requirement transformed into a comprehensive combat training facility, where Tonks waited with an eager expression. "Ready to push the limits of that integrated magic, Harry," she greeted him. "Moody set up a comprehensive assessment course to see exactly what you can do now." The assessment course proved to be a grueling series of magical challenges that tested every aspect of Harry's abilities, from basic spellwork to advanced magical perception to the creative application of his unique integrated knowledge. To Harry's surprise and satisfaction, he performed exceptionally well. Spells that had required intense concentration before the integration now came naturally. His magical perception allowed him to identify and counter hidden enchantments with ease. Even his wandless casting had improved dramatically, becoming nearly as powerful as his wand-focused spells. "Impressive," Moody acknowledged gruffly when Harry completed the final challenge, a simulated ambush involving multiple magical opponents. The integration ritual did more than stabilize the absorbed magic, it enhanced your overall magical efficiency. "It feels more natural now," Harry explained, barely winded despite the intense magical exertion. "Less like using someone else's knowledge and more like drawing on skills I've always had but never accessed." That's the ideal outcome, Tonks confirmed. Complete integration means no wasted magical energy fighting internal conflicts. Your core is unified but complex, like an alloy that's stronger than either original metal. This analogy resonated with Harry's experience. He wasn't simply Harry plus Travers' magic plus a fragment of Malfoy's power, he was a new magical entity incorporating elements of all three but functioning as a harmonious whole. As the weeks passed, this integrated identity solidified further. Harry maintained his rigorous training schedule while adapting to the challenges of his OWL year. To his relief, most of his classmates gradually adjusted to his altered status, treating him with cautious normality if not complete ease. Even Professor Umbridge's attempts to restrict and monitor him proved less effective than the Ministry had likely hoped. Her theoretical-only curriculum was counterbalanced by the practical training Harry received from Order members, and her authority to interfere with his specialized schedule was limited by Dumbledore's firm stance on educational autonomy. The only significant constraint was the Ministry-mandated weekly stability assessment, conducted by an unspeakable from the Department of Mysteries. These sessions, ostensibly to ensure the blood curse remained contained and controlled, were thinly veiled attempts to study and understand Harry's condition. "They're trying to replicate it," Hermione concluded after Harry described the increasingly specific questions the unspeakable asked during each assessment. "The Ministry wants to understand how the absorption works so they can potentially create their own version." "Fat chance," Ron snorted. "They can't even figure out how Harry's mother's protection worked in the first place, let alone how it transformed into this blood curse." Harry wasn't so certain. The Department of Mysteries had resources and expertise beyond ordinary magical research. If anyone could decode the mechanics of the blood curse, it would be the unspeakables. The question was, what would they do with that knowledge if they succeeded? This concern receded temporarily as October approached and with it, the first Hogsmeade weekend of the term. Despite security concerns, Dumbledore had insisted on maintaining normal school activities, arguing that restricting Harry too severely would only isolate him further. "You're sure it's safe?" Hermione asked as they prepared to join the other students heading to the village. "You'll be more exposed than at Hogwarts. Tonks and Kingsley will be patrolling in plain clothes," Harry assured her. "And Lupin stationed at the Three Broomsticks. Besides, after Malfoy Manor, I'm a bit more confident in my ability to handle trouble if it finds me." This confidence was not merely bravado. Since the integration ritual and his confrontation with Voldemort, Harry had developed a measured understanding of his capabilities. He was still learning the full extent of his integrated magic, but he knew enough to defend himself effectively against most threats. The Hogsmeade visit began uneventfully. Harry, Ron, and Hermione visited Honeydukes and Zonkos, then settled in the Three Broomsticks for butterbeer, enjoying the simple pleasure of being normal teenagers for an afternoon. The normality shattered abruptly when the pub's door burst open, admitting a wild-eyed wizard who scanned the room frantically before his gaze locked onto Harry. "Potter," he snarled, raising his wand. "The power should be mine." Harry reacted instinctively, erecting a shield charm that expanded to protect not only himself but Ron and Hermione as well. The attacking wizard's curse, a nasty bone-breaking hex, deflected harmlessly into the ceiling. The pub erupted in chaos as patrons dove for cover. Lupin emerged from a back room, wand drawn, but Harry was already responding to the threat with controlled precision. With his integrated magic flowing smoothly, Harry disarmed the attacker with a casual flick of his wrist, following immediately with a binding spell that wrapped the man in magical restraints before he could retreat. "Who are you?" Harry demanded, approaching the immobilized wizard cautiously. "Why attack me in a crowded pub?" The man glared at Harry with a mixture of hatred and desperation. "The power chooses wrong. I'm more worthy. More deserving." Lupin reached them, examining the bound wizard with a troubled expression. "I recognize him. Walden McNair, he works for the Ministry as an executioner, but he's long been suspected of Death Eater sympathies. He doesn't seem to be following Voldemort's orders," Harry noted, observing the man's independent rage. "This feels personal." The Dark Lord is wrong too, McNair spat. The absorption power should go to the strongest. I would have killed you and taken it for myself. Understanding dawned. This wasn't a coordinated Death Eater attack but a rogue attempt by someone who believed he could reverse the blood curse's effects, absorbing Harry's power rather than being absorbed himself. It doesn't work that way, Harry told him evenly. The blood curse is specific to me, a transformation of my mother's protection. You can't just take it by killing me. Lies. McNair hissed. All magic can be taken if you're strong enough. The rumors say you've absorbed 2 wizards already, their power should have been mine. Aurors arrived moments later, taking the ranting McNair into custody. As the excitement subsided and the pub returned to uneasy normalcy, Harry contemplated the implications of this attack. It won't be the last, Lupin said quietly, joining them at their table after the Aurors departed. McNair represents a dangerous category of threat, wizards who believe they can claim your ability for themselves. How would that even work? Ron asked incredulously. The blood curse is specifically tied to Harry through his mother's sacrifice and you-know-whose ritual. Logic rarely deters the power-hungry, Lupin replied grimly. There will be others who convince themselves they're special enough to succeed where others have failed. This prediction proved accurate in the weeks that followed. 2 more attempts were made on Harry's life, one by a notorious magical mercenary who infiltrated the Hogwarts grounds during a Quidditch practice, another by a foreign wizard who claimed to be a specialist in power transference rituals. Both were defeated relatively easily, but their attempts underscored a growing problem. Harry's blood curse had made him a target for power seekers throughout the magical world. The very ability that protected him from Voldemort was attracting others who sought to claim it for themselves. This can't continue, Hermione insisted after the second attack. You can't spend your entire life fighting off wizards trying to absorb your power or be absorbed. What's the alternative? Harry asked, genuinely uncertain. I can't remove the blood curse, even if I wanted to. The integration ritual made it permanent. Perhaps there's a way to make it less attractive as a target, Hermione suggested thoughtfully. If people believed attempting to absorb your power would have catastrophic consequences for the attacker. You mean like, spread rumors that anyone who tries gets their soul sucked out or something? Ron proposed. Not rumors, Hermione clarified. A genuine magical deterrent, something that makes attacking Harry with absorption intent genuinely dangerous for the attacker, beyond simply failing. The idea had merit, and they brought it to Dumbledore during their next meeting. The headmaster considered it with characteristic thoroughness. A magical deterrent specifically keyed to absorption attempts, he mused. Ingenious in concept, though complex in execution. It would require extending the blood curse's protective mechanism to include a more visible consequence for the attacker. Is that possible? Harry asked. The blood curse came from my mother's protection and Voldemort's ritual, not something I created deliberately. True, Dumbledore acknowledged. But your magical core has evolved significantly since then. With your integrated abilities and enhanced magical perception, you might be capable of consciously modifying the curse's external manifestation, not its core function, but how it appears to function. You mean make it look more dangerous than it is? Harry clarified. Precisely, Dumbledore confirmed. The absorption itself remains unchanged, but the visible effects could be enhanced to create a more formidable deterrent. They spent the next several weeks working on this approach, with Dumbledore guiding Harry through the subtle magical adjustments required. The process was delicate, modifying the external manifestation of the blood curse without disrupting its essential protective nature. By mid-November, they had succeeded. The next power seeker who attacked Harry, a disgraced cursebreaker who ambushed him during another Hogsmeade visit, discovered the enhanced deterrent firsthand. When his killing curse triggered the blood curse's absorption effect, the visual manifestation was dramatically more intimidating than previous incidents. Instead of simply disappearing as his magic was absorbed, the attacker appeared to be consumed by spectral flames, his body seeming to disintegrate painfully before vanishing completely. In reality, the absorption process remained unchanged, the attacker's magical essence transferred to Harry while their physical form collapsed, but the visible effect was significantly more terrifying to witnesses. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered after they returned to Hogwarts following the incident. "That was intense. You didn't tell us the deterrent would look like that." "It needed to be convincing," Harry replied, still processing the integrated fragment of the Cursebreaker's magic, a smaller absorption than Travers but still containing useful knowledge of magical barriers and protection-breaking techniques. "Well, it worked," Hermione observed. "Did you see everyone's faces? No one who witnessed that will be eager to try absorbing your power anytime soon." She was right. News of the horrific disintegration spread rapidly through magical communities, substantially reducing the number of power seekers willing to risk such a visibly terrible fate. The enhanced deterrent didn't eliminate the threat entirely, but it shifted the risk calculation enough to provide Harry some respite from constant attacks. This reprieve allowed him to focus more on his studies and training. As the term progressed, Harry's integrated magical abilities continued to develop in unexpected ways. His enhanced perception allowed him to see magical theory connections that even Hermione occasionally missed. His practical spellwork became increasingly innovative, combining traditional techniques with insights from his absorbed knowledge. Even his relationship with Voldemort's magical connection changed. Through disciplined occlumency and his improved magical control, Harry found he could regulate the connection more effectively, sometimes even accessing it deliberately to gather intelligence without being overwhelmed by Voldemort's emotions or thoughts. "You're essentially creating a one-way observation portal," Snape noted during an advanced occlumency session. "A dangerous technique, but potentially valuable if properly controlled." "It feels different since the integration ritual," Harry explained. "Less invasive, more like looking through a telescope rather than being pulled into his mind." Snape's expression remained impassive, but Harry detected a hint of reluctant approval. "Your magical maturity has accelerated considerably. You're developing abilities that typically require decades of study and practice." This was high praise coming from Snape, and Harry recognized it as such. Their relationship had shifted subtly since the Malfoy Manor mission, not exactly friendly, but marked by a new professional respect that transcended their personal history. As Christmas approached, bringing with it the end of term, Harry found himself in a period of relative stability despite the ongoing external threats. The blood curse had been integrated, the absorption process controlled, and the visible deterrent established. Voldemort remained a looming threat, but his direct attacks had ceased as he reassessed his strategy. "You've adapted remarkably well," Sirius told Harry during their last mirror conversation before the holiday break. "James would be impressed, and Lily would be proud of how you've handled the transformation of her protection." This validation from his godfather meant more to Harry than any magical accomplishment. "I'm still figuring it out," he admitted. "But it doesn't feel like a curse anymore, more like an unusual responsibility." "That's a healthy perspective," Sirius approved. "Power itself isn't good or evil, it's how you use it that matters. And you've consistently chosen to use yours protectively rather than aggressively." This conversation stayed with Harry as he prepared to leave Hogwarts for the Christmas holidays. He would be spending them at Grimmauld Place with Sirius and various Order members, a chance to relax somewhat from the constant vigilance required at school. On his last evening before departure, Harry stood at the astronomy tower window, gazing out over the snow-covered grounds. His enhanced magical perception allowed him to see the protective enchantments surrounding Hogwarts, layer upon layer of ancient spells shimmering like the northern lights against the night sky. He sensed Dumbledore's approach before hearing the headmaster's footsteps, the distinctive magical signature now as familiar to him as Ron's or Hermione's. "Admiring the view, Harry?" Dumbledore asked, joining him at the window. "The magical one," Harry confirmed. "It's beautiful, all the different protective enchantments working together. I never realized how complex Hogwarts' defenses were until I could actually see them." Dumbledore smiled appreciatively. "Few wizards ever develop the perception to witness such things. Your integrated abilities have opened magical vistas that most never experience." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the enchantments shift and flow in response to subtle magical currents. "Professor," Harry said eventually, voicing a question that had been forming in his mind for weeks, "do you think there are others like me out there? Other wizards who've absorbed magical abilities through some version of a blood curse?" Dumbledore considered the question thoughtfully. "History suggests it's possible, though extremely rare. Ancient texts mention wizards of unusual power who could consume the essence of their enemies. Most such accounts were dismissed as myth or exaggeration, but given your experience, they might have been real," Harry finished. "People who developed similar abilities and had to learn to control them, just like I'm doing." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "Which raises an interesting possibility for your future, Harry." "What do you mean?" Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled in the moonlight. "When this conflict with Voldemort is eventually resolved, as I believe it will be, you will face a different challenge, defining your path forward as a wizard with extraordinary and unique abilities." The thought of life after Voldemort still seemed distant to Harry, but he recognized the importance of Dumbledore's point. What would he do with his integrated magic once the immediate threats were past? "I've been thinking about that," Harry admitted. "About using what I've learned to help others who might develop unusual magical conditions, not just absorption abilities, but any kind of magical transformation they don't understand or can't control." Dumbledore nodded approvingly. "A worthy ambition. Your experience navigating this transformation gives you unique insight that could benefit others facing similar challenges." "It would mean continuing to develop the integrated magic," Harry noted. "Learning to absorb and incorporate new abilities if the situation arises, rather than just defending against the possibility." "A delicate balance," Dumbledore acknowledged. "Between accepting the potential growth your condition offers while resisting the temptation to seek power for its own sake." "Exactly," Harry agreed, relieved that Dumbledore understood his thinking. "I can't pretend the blood curse doesn't exist or that it won't continue to be part of my life. But I can choose how I relate to it, whether I see it as a burden to be contained or a responsibility to be managed." "And you've chosen the latter," Dumbledore observed. Harry nodded, his gaze returning to the magical defenses surrounding Hogwarts. "The blood curse came from my mother's love, transformed, yes, but still fundamentally protective in nature. I think she would want me to use it to protect others, not just myself." Dumbledore placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. "I believe you're right, Harry. And I believe you found the path forward that best honors both her sacrifice and your own integrity." As they stood together watching the magical enchantments shimmer against the night sky, Harry felt a deep sense of peace with his transformation. The blood curse that had once seemed a frightening aberration had become an integrated part of his identity, not defining him, but enhancing his ability to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He was still Harry Potter, but he was also something more, a wizard whose unique experiences had prepared him to understand magic in ways few others could. And perhaps, when the immediate battles were won, that understanding would become his greatest contribution to the wizarding world. Not as the boy who lived or the wizard who absorbed power, but as someone who could help others navigate their own magical transformations with wisdom, compassion, and hard-won insight. It wasn't the future he'd imagined when he first learned he was a wizard, but standing there with his integrated magic flowing harmoniously through him, Harry realized it was a future he could embrace, with purpose, with responsibility, and most importantly, with choice. The blood curse had changed him, but the direction of that change remained his to determine. And he chose to move forward not as a victim of circumstance but as the author of his own magical journey, whatever absorptions, integrations, and transformations might yet lie ahead. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.